I'd like to call to order the December 10th, 2024 City of Oregon City Commission work session. I'm going to convene the meeting and ask for the roll to be called. Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Here. Before we get started on item number 2, let's just quickly go around the tables and do just quick introductions. We have some guests tonight, and well, we'll start with you.
I'm Jacob Wiley. I'm the city recorder.
Alex Raines, Assistant City Manager.
Frank O'Donnell, Oregon City Commissioner.
Adam Marl, City Commissioner.
Rocky Smith, City Commission.
Tony Cockle, City Manager.
Denise McGriff, Mayor.
James Graham, Economic Development Manager.
Matthew Landcamer from Whereabout.
Rosalie Westonsko from Nonprofit Law Northwest.
Mike Mitchell, City Commissioner. And with the State Police.
Sean Davis, Police Chief.
Patrick Wills, HR. Hazard Finance. Scott Bush.
And we have someone online.
And a staff person online?
Yes, it's a consultant.
Oh, hi there.
Hi, all. Cheryl Cumming with Whereabout.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we'll get started with our agenda tonight. Thank you, everyone. Item number 2 is future agenda items. I'm going to turn that over to City Manager.
Thank you. So we are looking at the first meeting was canceled since it was on January 1st, would be the Wednesday. So we're going to move the swearing in and hold our first meeting of 2025 on January 7th, which would be our typical work session night. And then we have Park System Development charges coming back at the work session in February. And then realizing we do also have, after the last meeting, a request that we potentially will have additional Planning Commission interviews that we'll try to fit in there as well, depending on how many we receive after that's been advertised for the next 30 days or so.
Are there any questions? If you know of anybody that you think should be considered for Planning Commission, please let me know, and I'd be happy to chat with them and strong-arm them if necessary. All right, so item number 3 is general business, and we are going to be discussing items A and B, which are basically dealing with our proposed destination management organization. And is that you, Mr. Graham, or is that you, Mr. Conklin?
Mr. Graham.
It's me. Good evening, and this is going to be a big discussion with regard to how we're moving toward establishing a destination management organization. So this is a big change for the community in terms of how we conduct tourism in this community. Tonight, it's so big that we actually divide, the conversation is so big, we divide it into 2 pieces. One would be, the first piece is to discuss the legal parameters and items associated with establishing the DMO. And the second piece would be the managerial component and organizational structure of establishing the DMO. This entire initiative, as you know, was divided initially into 4 stages. And so we're addressing the 2 major stages tonight. And one of the last stages, which is recruitment support, will be at a later date. So we have here tonight representatives from of course, Whereabout, LLC, or LLC, and of course the attorney with North Profit Law Northwest LLC. So with that said, I will turn it over for the first discussion on the legal parameters to lead that discussion and answer any questions as we proceed. There are just as a note, and we'll get to it in a few moments, there are 2 typos in the DMO legal agreement, and we'll get to it in a moment, but one, it says 8% for city liaison, and it's intended to be 10%. So it's 10% everywhere, as opposed to 8%. So I'm going to turn it over to Rosalie so that we can continue the discussion regarding the legal parameters.
Let me just ask a quick question before we move forward. So there were some concerns that were expressed by Commissioner O'Donnell, and you did a very good job in attempting to answer those. And is that going to be incorporated in part of what you're going to discuss with us?
Sure, yeah, we can discuss any questions.
Yeah, I just thought that would be good just to kind of go over that.
Yeah, okay, so to start with an overview, the DMO was incorporated as a mutual benefit nonprofit corporation in Oregon under the name Destination Oregon City, Inc. It is a separate legal entity from the city and will be run by a board of directors. The relationship between the city and the DMO will be contractual, so will be governed by what the city and the DMO decide to put in the contract, and we have a draft there. So the documents that I provided to you for tonight are bylaws for the DMO, and these lay out how decisions will be made by the board of directors, how elections will be held to decide who's on the board, how officers will be selected, and other basic, pretty high-level governance decisions. There's also a 1024 application for 501c6 status with a supplemental response, so that's what will be submitted to the IRS to get tax-exempt status. That's a second step in the formation process. First we incorporate on the state level, then we apply for tax-exempt status. And then the third document is the Memorandum of Understanding draft to enter into between the city and the DMO. I don't know if you want to go through an overview of each of these or if you just want to start with questions. I'm not sure
I think an overview would be helpful. We're
Okay.
being recorded, and not everybody has everything
Yeah,
that
that's
we
fine.
have.
Yeah. So some of the highlights for the bylaws, I mean, I don't want to go into depth for each of them just because that would take quite a bit of time. But a few of the sort of high-level decisions that were made with the ad hoc committee, and then also with our first meeting with the commission. As I mentioned, it's a mutual benefit corporation. That's one of the three types of nonprofits here in Oregon. We decided not to have voting members, so that means that the organization can have non-voting members, similar to how like OPB or the zoo have members. These are people who are involved but don't have legal rights against the organization. So don't have the right to elect directors or to request certain documents from the organization that wouldn't normally be available to the public. In terms of the board of directors, the way that we decided to establish it for these draft bylaws is to set the board at a size of 5 to 7 directors, voting directors, so that could fluctuate between 5 and 7. And then to always have an ex officio member who is non-voting. So this is someone who's appointed by the city and will be sitting on the board and engaged, but doesn't have a vote on anything, so doesn't have any of the fiduciary duties or rights of a director. We've set the terms for the directors in the bylaws as well, the ex officio director, as we mentioned, would be appointed by the city, but the rest of the directors are elected by the board itself, right? So the board, at the end of the terms, would then be electing the next board. And we've set those terms, as you'll see, they're staggered. So they're 2-year terms, but they stagger so that about half the board would be elected every year. In terms of officer positions, we've just set the minimums in the statute of a president, secretary, and treasurer. Decisions would be made by a majority vote at any meeting, and then the bylaws can be amended as well by a 2/3 vote. So that's a very broad overview of the bylaws. Moving on to the application.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
let's jump into that.
So under 3.4, where you've got qualifications composition,
Yes.
I like the fact that it states that there can't be more than one person from any of the sectors. What I'm concerned about on that particular thing are two things, and you say to the degree possible. A lot of people in these particular fields don't necessarily live in Oregon City, and so I'm wondering if we could say either geographic areas within Oregon City and/or Clackamas County. I mean, they're not all going to be
And you're talking about the last sentence,
Yes,
or you're
yes.
talking about the
the
first
last
sentence?
in
Okay.
3.4.
And so that is saying that the board will represent different geographical areas. I don't think it necessarily means that that person has to live in that
Well, it says
area,
within
right?
Oregon City, but, you know, they either live
Right.
or work, but again, people in these industries aren't necessarily within our geographic Oregon City area, which is, I'm thinking, you know, to me, geographic area of Oregon City is Oregon City city limits.
Right. And my understanding was that was what the DMO was very focused on, was
Oh, I
within the
agree, it
city
is Oregon
limits.
City, but again, they can represent the industry, but I'm concerned that can they live somewhere else?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, okay, so if you look at, so our requirements are that the director themselves has to have a meaningful connection to the Oregon City tourism industry through previous employment, investment, ownership, or nonprofit board service. So that doesn't have anything to do with residents, just their connection through employment or investment or nonprofit board service with an organization or a business within the city limits of Oregon City.
Yeah, I mean, I hope
Yeah.
some of them will be residents, because I think they have more skin in the game, in my opinion.
Right, yes.
And it also
Yeah.
says to the degree possible.
I know, and that's why I said, because, again, we're going to be looking at dealing with the first batch of people.
Right.
And while I want, you know, geographic representation, I'll be looking at some other categories that there be more representation from as well. And then the other thing I had a concern about, maybe this is ridiculous, but we've got people in these industries, and I said in my note, if they're on this board and in the industry, what about conflicts? And I know there was something in the later section about conflicts of interest, which was very confusing. So when we get there,
Yes, we can talk to that.
because some of the stuff that will be happening will be directly beneficial to whatever that industry is, maybe not that person individually, hopefully not that person individually.
Right.
And that, I just thought the conflict of interest statement that's further on, or if there's a conflict, it was, and you could maybe explain it, because it just was confusing.
Sure, yeah, let's go to that.
And then I had another thing about terms of office and so forth. There was nothing in here about if somebody misses so many meetings.
Yes, sir.
Was
There
it there?
is.
Because I missed it. I was looking for it, and I went back the second time, and I thought,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to 3.8 is
3.8.
removal.
Okay, well, let me get there. Okay, removal.
And so that last sentence there says if a director misses more than 1/3 of the board meetings in any year without an excuse accepted by the board or the chair, the board must consider removal following the procedure explained above. So,
I think it would be better to say an excused absence.
okay,
I mean, that's what's typically on the boards that I serve on. That you've got to give notice and say, for whatever.
That's what it says. That's what it says.
Yeah, well, it just says without an excuse.
accepted by the board or the chair.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be an excuse. I want it to be an excused absence, because I could say, oh, I just didn't feel like going there, and that's my excuse.
So in terms of what counts as an excused absence, do you mean something that was approved ahead of time? Is that how you're delineating that?
Again, I have considerable board service on many,
Right.
and the rule of thumb has always been you give notice to the chair or the director ahead of time that you are going to be, absent. For
Okay.
instance, I've got a board meeting coming up in February of 2025. I know I'm going to be absent. I already let them know that I'm going to be absent from that meeting.
Perfect, okay. So prior approval
Yeah.
for that excuse, okay.
Unless it's, there's things that happen, accidents, death, etc. But it just seemed like it was a little, 3.8 was a little bit, it says removal. And so when I'm reading removal, and then you go down and then it's there if they miss more than 1/3, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I guess the question is, yes, does others have?
I'm just saying, I just raised the question.
Okay,
Oh, does others have any comment on that issue? It doesn't seem to.
I think it's covered.
All right. I just need a consensus.
Want to
'cause
change it to say excused absence instead of excuse accepted by that.
That's why I said substitute excused absence.
Okay.
Instead of excuse, because like I said, I could just say I didn't feel like going to the meeting and that's my excuse. Is that acceptable? Probably not.
Okay.
I was gonna go back to 3.4.
Yeah.
So my question, and I agree with most of everything it says there, and when it talks about the composition, my question would be, some of those, how are they spelled out? Let's see. Well, you have the individual categories. What happens when you have someone who's a fishing guide, which is essentially outdoor recreation?
Sure.
And you have kayaking, which is river-based activity. They're both river-based activities. So that's, to me, two people from the same category.
Yeah, I would
How are we
agree.
defining? I can see how they can be overlapped and separated. So is
Yes.
there a class, do we have some descriptors for these categories that prevents that overlap? If that makes any sense, or do we know what are we really saying is the difference between outdoor rec and river-based activities? Is there something that defines those separately?
Are you concerned because we've said that you can only have one director from
Right.
one sector, and you're worried that they
So-
might actually represent two sectors?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly explain that more. I think to some extent, some of this will have to be up for interpretation to the board unless we want to, I don't know if we want to go down the road of defining each of these industries.
I think
And
it depends.
I think there is some, I think this wording allows some leeway to the board to ensure that we are having a diverse representation of sectors.
Right. Okay, so if
But
the board
also-
itself says, well, this is too close of a
Then that's
Yes,
thing, then
yes, yeah.
they can have that discussion.
Or for
Yeah.
instance, if we were doing the first board of directors and we had that situation, we'd have a discussion about it and say, well, yeah, these are both river-based.
Similar, or,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Other questions before the conflict of interest section? Should we jump there?
Which section?
I've got other questions before
Sure.
that. Starting with Article 1, the purpose,
Yeah?
the last paragraph, and I know this is something that Commissioner O'Donnell has talked about a lot. Drive economic growth for the benefit of Oregon City's tourism and so forth. Through strategic marketing and community involvement, it used to say marketing, comma, management, and community involvement.
Yeah, we can certainly include that.
Management is a part of what they're to be doing.
I couldn't agree more. When I was providing my inputs during this formation, I looked at where we succeeded and where we did not succeed. And there was a lack of ability to manage assets that caused our least favorable outcomes.
Right.
So that's where we got into the discussion about should it be called a DMO or DMMO. And, I know we have different opinions on that, but I think it's important to emphasize the fact that this is in fact not only a marketing organization, but a management organization.
Right.
Could be DM2O.
Yeah.
Being squared.
Okay, so next, on Article 3, board duties. It doesn't specifically mention establishing a budget, or is that kind of implicit in where it says overseeing the financial affairs?
That would be, that it's supposed to be broader than just a budget. This is just supposed to be a general list of, and hopefully all those things would fall under there, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's another document that talks about dispersal of funds.
The executive director will be preparing the
Yeah.
budget. Just know that when you turn your head that way, you're not getting picked up
Oh,
by the mic.
sorry. Okay.
So just take it with you.
Yes.
Okay, ex officio director, I'm on page 2 near the bottom. And it talks about the ex officio director.
Yes.
First off, I'm assuming that would be non-voting.
Yes, the ex officio director is not actually a director for any legal sense.
Okay, so it needs to say non-voting.
Yes, and that is included in saying, earlier on, let me find where it is. 3.5, when it's first mentioned, the ex officio director has no vote and does not have any of the same rights or responsibilities as other directors.
Okay, all right, so that's covered. So my question about ex officio directors, I assume, are we talking there about a commission representative?
I would hope so.
Yes.
Yeah. Liaison.
Yes, they are
It's the same as
appointed.
liaison, is it not?
Okay, so.
It's not the same as the city liaison referenced in the MOU, which is a city employee. It could be the same person appointed by the board or by the commission, but this is a person who is appointed by the commission to serve as the ex officio director.
So will there be two positions? One would be a city commissioner who's a liaison, and one will be an ex officio member who is not a commissioner?
They would be the ex officio member.
The city commission can decide who they want to appoint as the ex officio director. There's no limitation in these bylaws on who that person must be or can be.
I'm wondering if we want to have also as an ex officio the executive director of the Mount Hood territory. I think having that person sit or their designee would be very helpful. And I wrote that in my notes. I said, I think
Got
that.
it on mine too.
Okay. Obviously, we're thinking alike, so.
But I think in response to your question, Commissioner O'Donnell, is that it sounds like a city commissioner or city commission designee will be the ex aficionado on the board. But then the city liaison will be the staff member who's
Yes.
going to deal with coordinating marketing, communications, billing, money. It'll be the staff that we identified that'll be the contact
Correct.
with the executive
And
director.
the ex officio director is established in the bylaws and would remain until these bylaws were amended, whereas the city liaison is set up by contract. So would be changed by contract or end with a contract if it ever ended. That makes sense? Yeah.
Do we not want to specify that that's a city commissioner and not just anyone that,
It says it,
no, it says or, no, it doesn't say that.
It says whoever the commission appoints. So
So that
the
means
commission
it
has
could be
the,
well,
I would leave yourself that leeway.
yeah.
let's,
If you're all too busy to
wouldn't.
serve,
well,
I wouldn't,
you can appoint somebody else.
we have ex officio members to every other organization, and this is ours, this is ours that we're setting up and funding.
well, the first preference for me would be a city commissioner, but
Well,
let's
then I
just,
think we need to say that.
let's just say that we don't,
I think it should say city commission.
I think it needs to be one of us, because,
okay?
I just think that.
I just wanted to give us a little broad, this, something. We can have
We
an
don't do
alternate.
that with the other groups.
Well, we have alternates with the other groups as well.
And it certainly can be
But
that,
the alternates
it can
are
be whatever you please. So there are two that don't have an issue with it being a city commissioner spelled out. And are there others?
I'm okay with it, it's fine.
You're okay?
I would like it to
I just be spelled
out for a city commissioner.
I just assumed it was,
Okay.
so I just left it
Okay,
that
we'll
way.
add city commissioner.
Okay, so we'll add city commissioner as an ex officio appointed by the
And do
commission.
we have agreement that we want to add a representative from Mount Hood territory?
I think we should. That is an ex officio.
Do we not talk about that in other documents about the formation of the board and participation and attendance at meetings and?
This is the document that would lay out who is required to be an ex officio director, who the board's required to have an ex officio. If you want to add other ex officio directors, you can. Would you be giving, I assume you would be giving, and I'm not sure what, is this another nonprofit, Mount Hood?
It's the DMO for the county.
Yeah, okay. So you would give them the authority, I assume, then to appoint whoever they wanted to be an ex
I would say
officio.
The executive director or their designee.
Okay. Make sure that they're willing to do that as well, right? You know, like, yep.
See why
We haven't chatted with her yet.
Okay.
Let's just put it in there and we'll ask about it later.
She just got the job.
Is that something that all of you want to add in then?
Why that makes me give pause is each of these organizations would love to be an ex officio member. OCBA would love to be an ex
This is
officio member.
completely different.
How so?
I don't see OCBA or the chamber or anybody else being a member of this particular board. The executive director or their designee of the DMO for the county directly relates to what this group will be doing.
Okay, then why don't we create another ex officio position for the tourism board of the state of Oregon? Because they're also involved at a certain level. I just think that it gets to a point where we're allowing other people to say, well, if they are, then why can't I be there? So I'm fine with it as it is.
And I will say in our ad hoc meetings, there was discussion about having like 4 or 5 different ex officio members from a variety of different organizations. So I do think that there's some limit to how many we want to include.
Yeah, I don't want all the business groups involved in this.
What you're going to experience is these individual interest groups feeling that they will exert more influence
Exactly.
by being appointed to these specific positions while others are not. And I actually had an exchange of emails with somebody that said, well, we think that we should be on that board. And I said, if you think that, then you should put your name in for consideration as a board member.
Yeah, there you go.
In the meantime, you are free to attend open meetings to voice your opinion.
Yes.
That's what we tried to, that's the discussions we always had. So you always worry about the perception of favoritism and influence.
So that's been part of the problem to date.
Well, the only reason I think it might be important is that hopefully will be a lot of coordination between what county tourism does and what our tourism group does. And it does say, and I know in the job description for the executive director, it does talk about coordination with Travel Oregon and Mountain Territories, part of that person's responsibility. So I don't know, maybe that covers it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that type of coordination is not reliant on having someone as an ex officio member. Maybe Matthew or Cheryl might have thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, Rosalie. I think where the work happens is not so much at the board meetings, but in the day-to-day, and that's where you want the coordination to happen most.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to have an ex officio member that's appointed by the city commission because of that contractual relationship and the funding, but that's a very different situation.
Okay, I have one more to bring up, and I don't know what the right way to handle it is, but how do we cooperate, integrate a voice from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde into this? Because they are in the process of building a massive tourist-oriented facility, and should they have a voice in some way?
So,
bringing it up.
This gets to I think, the same thing that because I understand where you're coming from. I think for me, it again gets to the point where other tribes who also say that they have business in the area can say, well, if you're picking them out, then we have to be involved as well in a similar fashion to everything else that's happening with that area, is where I think we could run into some issues.
I guess I don't have a strong feeling about it, but my comment is no. I know they're spread very thin, and I think if they have things that they're interested in coordinating, that, we have ways to get them involved is what I would want to say.
Okay.
We talked about that in the de facto meetings. And where it went to is, in the attempt to be transparent, the publication of upcoming meetings and agendas, and actually emailing list as to those who would be notified so they can come and attend. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, please.
No.
But I mean, that's how we intended to accomplish that, because again, this perception of favoritism could be the demise of the organization.
Good point. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so we specifically in 3.12 included a requirement that notice, because this organization will not be subject to public records or meetings laws as a private nonprofit corporation, but we required that they give notice to anyone who signed up for notice, basically, of meetings, so that it really doesn't mean that they can't go into executive session, and the rules for executive session are much different than it would be for a public entity, but that will encourage community involvement and people being aware of meetings and
So
things
you're
like that.
saying notice of meetings, but the meetings aren't open?
They are, so they don't, legally they don't have to be in the way that like a public entity would be required to, but because of that we have required notice to people who've requested it. So, presumably you can go on the DMO's website and sign up for notice. Seems like the simplest way to me. And then those people get notice. The board could go into executive session to discuss something of sensitive legal nature or something like that, but.
It's a different subject. I wanted to throw out consideration of how the initial board is formed and subsequent boards.
Okay, well, we'll get there.
Okay, just keep that thought in mind.
I did want to make a,
I'm getting texts from people that they can't hear you.
well, we got the mics there.
Can't hear whom? Any one of us or all of us?
They can't hear all of you when you speak. I guess just speak directly into the mic.
Okay.
Never mind. I wanted to make a suggestion about, this is going to be a little picky-uni about formatting, where there is lots and lots of sentences. There are things that I think could be bullet pointed to make it easier to read and put a space between each of the sections. I had to go through, for instance, on the qualifications and composition. My suggestion would be, and the following, and bullet pointed. It'll make it longer, but it's just, everything is just really crammed on here. And if you're trying to find something, it's going to be difficult when you go back to try to look for something else, because all the sentences they're all just mushed in here together. And
Sure,
it may be
we
more
can do that.
visually pleasing. And again, maybe it's going to make it longer, which I don't think that matters, but it would just be helpful if there was a little more spacing, and that if there are things that are called out and you're listing X, Y, Z, maybe that would be helpful.
Sure.
It was just a little hard to read.
Okay. We can definitely do that.
I've got one
always
more
agreed
thing.
with that.
Go right ahead.
Is anybody else concerned with a 2-year term? You could conceivably lose more than half of your board.
Everybody has a 2-year term, or I thought it was staggered.
It
It is.
staggered.
After the initial setup. And the first time around, half of the people only have a 1-year term.
Oh, we can fix that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. And are we concerned about potentially losing half of the board every year? Because you lose, if it's 7, you lose 3 positions 1 year, and then next year you lose 4. Now, they can reapply, but the potential exists that you would lose half the board, and it caught my eye. I don't know if anybody else is concerned with it or not.
We thought about that.
Maybe say 2 and 2 and 2 and 2.
Well, we thought about that,
Extend
Mike.
the term.
Okay.
We thought about that because the alternative is you lose your entire board in 4 years.
Well, you
Or
can,
you do 3.
you can
Or
do
you're
longer,
closer, Frank.
we can do longer terms if you want, which is fine. We could do 3-year terms and, do a third of the board is elected every year. You could do 4-year terms, have a fourth elected every year. It really is up to all of you.
What's the suggestion from the commission?
I think the goal was to maintain continuity, was it not?
Yes.
So what's the best solution to that?
Well, probably having longer terms. I think the only question is, at what point are they too long to get volunteers to serve? So that's kind
What's
of
your
the...
suggestion, Michael?
I was thinking 3.
For what?
3 years.
3? I liked your suggestion of the third going,
That's fine.
not
Yeah.
everybody.
Others? 3?
We actually had that discussion about length of term and encouraging people to initially apply versus a large commitment. They can always resign.
So you did discuss 3-year terms?
We discussed mainly staggered terms and a shorter first term to allow for staggered terms and to encourage people who may potentially be remiss to apply because of the commitment to put their foot in the water and test it. But the option to that is you sign up for the term and you resign if you feel it's unmanageable for you.
We're talking
Yeah, that's always an
about
option.
3.6 sub E, correct, under term?
Yes, yeah. And so just to note, if we do 3-year terms with a third reelected or up for reelection each year, the initial terms won't all be 3 years. Some will be 1, some will be 2, some will be, so, yeah.
The math. So we've got a 2-year term suggested, we've got 3-year term suggested. What's the pleasure? Just as a...
Well, for me, it's about the will of the future commission, not mine, so whatever they think.
My concern is that it's going to take people 2 years just to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
And then they're gone, That's counterproductive.
All right.
I'd like to make a quick comment on that. With the many districts that I've been involved in, 3 or 4 years allows folks to ramp up. And you'd be surprised at the interest once they get that involved, how interested they are to continue to serve.
So
Anybody got a number they want to throw out that's not 2?
I think three makes sense. I'm open to.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Discussion
Okay.
though.
Frank?
I'm fine with, remember, you will be interacting with these folks in the future, not me, so.
Well, I don't know. You might be on it. I don't know.
No. I can tell you, I will not.
Oh, yeah, people always say that. Michael, what do you think? 3. Okay, let's go with 3.
okay, perfect.
Got a consensus?
With third terming out each time, is that? Yeah,
That's
okay.
my understanding, right?
Okay.
Third, okay.
3-year
yeah.
terms with 1/3 of the. Okay.
Well, how many 3-year terms do we want to allow them to serve?
Well, we haven't put a cap on the number of terms. I think Matthew was just referring to when they would come up when that position would come up for election. And I would recommend not having a cap, at least to start with, just because
Not having,
a cap on the number of consecutive terms that directors can serve, I would recommend not having one. I think that's something that when an organization is more mature and farther along in its life cycle, it might make sense to amend the bylaws to add in.
And are they elected or are they appointed to their positions?
They are elected by the board itself, so they don't vote on their own position. But when their position comes up for election, the rest of the board would vote on who would replace that position.
But to be clear on that point, it does say that they do need to take a 1-year break after serving up to 2 consecutive.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I apologize. Yeah, we did add that in. That was a change that we made. So, yes, so we have put a cap on of 2.
Okay.
And then a 1-year break, so my apologies.
Yeah, I don't support that, but I don't know how you guys feel about it.
So it would be a break after 2
After 3, 6 years.
terms.
So
Yeah, after
6
6
years.
years.
Or,
I mean, it's not much different than our terms for commission.
yeah, and potentially the first terms, it might be more like 4 years if you were one of the shorter initial terms. But after that, it would be 6 years.
Commission, we can come back and be appointed to a different committee, but I guess I don't have thoughts one way or another on that.
I think that even though I'm not a fan of it in the case of the commission, I think that in the case of this, where you have, at least as written now, the subsequent elections being decided by the sitting board members, that if you don't have a cap, why not just keep bringing the people that I already know and that I work with right now?
Sure.
And so I think it strikes a balance between that lack of turnover that Commissioner Mitchell was getting to, while also recognizing that there are a lot of interested stakeholders who may be kept out if it just turned into everyone re-upping every single year type of deal.
that also will lead you back to that discussion about what is the city commission role in the selection of the initial board versus subsequent boards, if any. If you want to just step away and let the existing DMO board select their next board, or do you want to be involved in the vetting of those candidates or not? And as it stands now, you are not.
Correct, yeah. The city commission, as it stands right now, would not be involved in that process at all, other than its ability to appoint the ex officio member.
So it sounds like we have a general consensus for 3 years with a break. And if they want to run again, they could.
And a break of 1 year after 2 terms.
That's 2 terms of 3 years, or 6 years and a 1-year break.
Yes.
Short 4 years for a first term.
Yeah, depending, I mean, that
First term
first,
maybe a 1 year and then a
yeah,
3-year term and then.
but 2 terms, however that is, yeah,
Depending on how the math works out.
right.
I noticed also there's a place where, and this is, I have to say, this was taught to me by lawyers, so all you lawyers, you should be rejoicing. There's a couple places where it says must, and I would like to see it changed to shall.
Okay.
If it's something very specific, it's like it says the initial director shall be appointed. Then I see over here, regular and special meetings, the board of directors must meet, shall meet, should be
Sure,
shall.
we can do that.
I know there's the should and the shalls. I was paying attention that day in class. So if I see of any others, I'll just let you know. There's places where it says may, and that's totally appropriate.
Sure, we can change that. Any other questions before the conflicts of interest section?
Oh.
Yeah,
No, I'm curious about the removal,
okay.
mainly because I don't know what our expectations are in other committees in the city or anything like that.
Well, it's not a
I know that
committee.
we can't vote each
It's
other
not
out.
it's not a committee.
Yeah.
No, I know that, but I just think it's interesting that, you know, 2/3 of the people, the board can vote someone out for any reason, anytime they feel like it.
Well, it says without cause. I think it has to be with cause.
You can require cause if you want. I think the problem is that a statute, the Nonprofit Corporation Act, doesn't really give us a cause, right? So absent something illegal, it can be hard to determine what's in the best interest of a corporation, right?
What about malfeasance?
So, yeah, sure. So, you know, something along those lines. However, if you have a board where somebody is essentially preventing you from getting anything done or working against the organization, they can do that in a way that's not, you know, illegal or something, you know, tantamount to, you know what I'm saying? It's just, they have a different
But on the opposite
purpose.
end, if the majority of the board wants someone out, regardless of any reason, that's not right either, I don't think.
How about if they're indicted?
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's what, I mean, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah,
cause means like, we just don't like that person and they're not voting the way we want, so we want them out.
I don't think, I think they have to be, they can only be removed with cause. I think without cause would be subject to the thing you're saying. I mean, let's say you've got a board member that's a pain in the ass.
Right.
You know, do you vote them out because they're a pain in the ass? Maybe, I don't know.
So then do you have to define
Yes, you
potential
definitely have to
causes?
define cause.
Yeah, you
So we need to be very specific then and quite in-depth if we're going to require cause.
Yeah, because you could very well have a legal battle with trying
Illegal,
a legal battle.
felony, committed a crime, stole money, you're a pain in the ass. That would be, you know, part of the...
Yeah,
Carl, I
usually
think
we'd
you
want
would put
something
down-
much broader than just illegal behavior, though. And so, because the statute also doesn't provide us with a good action, there is not really a cause of action to bring if somebody is removed in a way that they shouldn't have been. So it just creates a sort of difficult gridlock that we don't have a good way to resolve. So that's why I always
That's the
do
way we
without cause
operate.
and a 2/3.
That's the way we operate. They're recalled or they stay on. You
I
know,
tend to follow the advice of attorney in this matter.
We can require cause, but we'll need a very, you know, we'll want an extensive list of what that would be.
So you're going to end up with a list that says potential causes but not limited to, you know,
And if you
that's
say
wide
not
open.
limited to, then we're not requiring cause.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Like,
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand.
I'm reminded of a famous TV quote where he says, "You can't fire him without cause," and he says, "I do have cause. It's because I hate him." And I think that's kind of.
I guess two things. One, it's not a political position,
Right.
right? So you
Correct.
don't have elections to fall back on a recall or an election that comes up. I mean, would it, I mean, you know, 2/3 is probably standard, you know, I mean, would, if we raise the threshold, would that be better? I mean, this isn't a political appointment, right? This is supposed to be a functioning nonprofit that's using
Right.
public funds and whatever other
Correct.
funds they bring. And so if someone's not going to show up, or is not going to participate, or is just going to make it, the inability to make decisions and move forward. I mean, essentially, all the votes could end up one against everybody else as well. They'll still do business, right? I mean, nothing is unanimous necessarily. But if we raise the threshold for removal, would that, I mean, to sit here and try and spell out exactly.
We don't know what the spelling out would be.
Well, the threshold is pretty high, 2/3. That's pretty high.
That's really high,
I
4
get
to
it, but
5.
if it's forfeit, you know, or if it's, you know, is there a number that makes?
5, it'd be 3 people, right?
I've struggled with that from the beginning. This 2/3 of 5
Yeah.
is an odd number, and 2/3 of 7 is
I like
like 4.66, you know?
Yeah, you're going to round up.
So you'd have to have 5 of the
It's,
7.
yeah, it just always rounds up, yeah.
Okay, and 2/3 of 5 is what?
Would be 3, I believe, right?
Three.
I don't like,
3 would
I
be
don't like the
60% of
5.
5.
3,
I think
Yeah.
okay,
it's too small.
3.33.
And because the director being
We round up even if it's less than
Well,
half?
because 3 out of 5 is not 2/3. 3 out of 5 is 60%, not 66.
So you get 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5.
Okay.
And because the director
It'd have to be 4
being
out of 5.
considered for removal doesn't have a vote, basically you're requiring unanimous of the other directors. So just in my experience working with many, many nonprofits around the state in a variety of different industries, it is hard to have a functioning nonprofit if you cannot remove somebody from the board who's obstructing
Yep.
the work of the nonprofit. And it's hard often in those cases to prove cause of something that you would have anticipated ahead of time.
So are we all right with the
I'll
way it
leave it
is?
3.6, we don't have any provision in here for a nominating committee. It just says nominations for new members, and I don't know why members is capitalized, but anyway, of the board of directors may be made by the board of directors or by individual directors. Every other group I'm on has a small nominating committee of maybe 3 people, and they accept applications or whatever. It just seems like this is just random.
Yeah.
Well, D allows for the board to create a policy for how to do elections, how to set up the nominating committee and things like that. We can set it out in the bylaws, but usually we start to expand those things in policies outside of the bylaws, just so they don't get too long. And because it's the kind of thing you might want to change more often than the bylaws themselves.
One, we don't know how high the interest would be to necessitate a nominating committee separate from the board itself.
Right. And as interest grows, that may require a very different process than,
Well, I know they're looking for people for Mount Hood Territory Board right now, and they're having a little bit of a difficult time.
yeah. Okay, should we move on to conflicts of interest? So this is 3.21. The IRS lays out a sample conflict of interest policy in its Form 990, which is the tax return.
I'm sorry, can you speak up? Or
Yeah,
turn that
sure.
microphone up or something?
Yeah.
The IRS lays out a sample conflict of interest policy in its Form 990, which is the tax return filed by nonprofits that are tax exempt. And it requests that all tax exempt entities have a conflict of interest policy that is the same or similar to that sample policy. So because of that, the sample policy that I use is based on that IRS language, which is also mirrored in ORS 65, which is the Nonprofit Corporation Act here in Oregon. So once the board is, once we have a board functioning for the organization, I write several policies for the board, including a conflict of interest policy, which is much more expanded than what's in the bylaws. However, because it's so important, I do like to include at least an abbreviated version in the bylaws so it can't be changed easily. What this requires is that first you'll be able to identify conflict of interest transactions. A conflict of interest arises anytime the organization is going to enter into a transaction, and that transaction is going to impact the finances of a director or one of their family members or a business that they have an ownership interest in. When that happens, the director with the conflict has to disclose the conflict if, it's not already apparent to everyone on the board, and then they're required to recuse themselves from the following discussion and vote. The rest of the board is required to do enough market research to show that this will be fair to the organization. So in other words, they are not giving an unearned benefit to the insider, the director, or their family member, or the business that they own. So that may look like getting quotes from other businesses for that service. It may look like looking at compensation surveys if you're setting compensation or job postings. It depends on the transaction, right? Or if we were purchasing land or leasing, it would look at, looking at comparable listings of similar types of real estate. Once that's done, it has to be recorded in the minutes and kept permanently to show that it'll be fair to the organization. And then a majority of all directors without a conflict have to approve that transaction. So those are the rules set by the IRS, and here in Oregon, the DOJ, Charitable Activities Division.
I like the section in here you have that these cannot be approved by the chair, executive committee, or executive director.
Correct.
And you should change all those must to shalls, because they
Okay.
look like they're shalls things. So, shall analyze the transaction, shall be recorded in the minutes, you know, shall be approved by affirmative majority vote. All that should be
Sure.
very specific.
Yeah, we
I
can.
did have a question about 3.20.
Sure.
It says that the chair shall be the official spokesperson for the organization. And again, I've been in organizations where the chair went rogue, saying things that they weren't directed to by the board. So I guess my concern is that you have no member of the board of directors other than the chair may officially represent the positions of the organization. Well, what if the vice president is going to someplace and they should have the authority by the board to go to, they get directed to go to X, Y, the chair may not be able to do everything, but I don't think the chair should have the sole discretion of when they're speaking officially or not officially unless they get the direction of the board.
So other directors can speak on their behalf with specific approval by the board? Is that the end of that
I'm talking
sentence?
about the chair in the first sentence.
Oh, sorry, I was just addressing your second question. Yeah, we can require that nobody has that without approval of the board. That's fine. The intent of this is to be clear on not having various directors speaking separately to the media, which I've certainly seen some liability created by that in unfortunate ways with other organizations. So if you want to just say that whoever the board designates as the official spokesperson is fine to do that, but it's good to have one person who is designated to do that.
I'm not objecting to the chair being the spokesperson. What I'm saying is that if the board takes a position, then that's when the chair should be able to speak about it. They should not be making comments or positions that their board has not authorized.
Correct, yeah.
And it didn't say that to me. It just says it says they are the official spokesperson for the organization. Well, what if the executive director's been sent to something and can they speak on behalf of the board if they've been directed by the board?
Yes, that's what I was trying to say originally. That second sentence says, nobody can do that without specific approval by the board, meaning that anyone who's been given specific
Including
approval
the chair?
Well, the chair would be the default to do that.
So I didn't think it said that. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay.
And it could be maybe the way it's written, that's, again, it read to me that this person is just saying whatever.
So to clarify, what you would like here is to explain that the chair can only speak on behalf of the organization when authorized to do so? Is that
if the board takes the position, then yes, they would be out there, he or she, they are out there saying, okay, our board took this position, this is what the DMO is supporting, blah, 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 not what I, the chair, is saying or somebody else is saying.
Well, certainly that is true, but I can make that more clear.
Yeah, maybe make it clearer.
Excuse me, but I'm looking at the sentence that says, no member of the board of directors other than the chair may officially represent the positions of the organization or speak or act on behalf of the organization without specific approval by the board of directors to do so.
And what I'm saying is that applies to everybody, including the chair.
Including the chair.
Sure, yeah, we can definitely make that very clear. Okay.
I said the conflict of interest section, you had, A, B, and again, it's the formatting probably that makes it difficult to get the gist of what we're trying to say here.
Okay. Other questions on the bylaws?
I think the conflict of interest section actually deals effectively with what you're going to experience because the very members who bring expertise to these positions could potentially stand to financially benefit, and those controls are in that section.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Dumb question. So under 4.1, it lists the chair, secretary, treasurer, and a vice chair. Why isn't it the chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer? It just seems, I'm not sure why the word order is that way.
I usually do that because the vice chair isn't required by statute, but we can certainly change that.
The first three are required by statute?
Yes, yeah, the first three are required.
Well,
But I can certainly move that around, that's fine.
Yeah, just put them in order.
Okay.
In that same section, so it says, the same individual may simultaneously hold more than one office.
I didn't get that.
Except that the offices of chair, secretary, and treasurer may not be held simultaneously by the same individual. So does that mean the chair can also be the vice chair?
If the board wanted to, I don't know why they would do that, but
Why
the
do we have a
statute
sentence in there?
specifically won't allow what's called the president in the statute. You cannot have one person be president, secretary, and treasurer at the same time. You could have two people fill those roles, but, so you could have, like a chair/secretary and a treasurer, for instance, but you can't have one person in all three roles.
I don't think one person should hold more than one office.
We can certainly do that, yeah.
Well, I think that there could be value in like a secretary treasurer, I think is something that's used quite often. So I understand the intent. I just wanted clarification on whether that specific instance could be possible, not that it would be something
I guess
that they
it could,
desire.
I don't know
but
why
yeah,
they would
looking
do
at
it,
the
but
text
legally you
yeah.
could, if you
I
wanted.
would like we keep them separate because more than likely this treasurer will have signing authority on financial matters, and I don't want that to be the same person who's also holding another office.
Okay.
I'm the treasurer of a public entity, nonprofit, and the secretary and the treasurer positions are separate.
Yeah, that's
I have-
often the case,
I have
yeah.
to sign off on the checks, as does the chair and then the executive director, so
Yeah.
there's 3 signatures required.
Yeah. Is that what we want to do? So, all separate individuals?
Share the wealth.
I just, the concern that I would bring is that if it is a 5-member board and you have 4 positions, I don't know if that would be feasible and whether the members or the directors would be up for that.
Another option is to remove the vice chair, and you're not required to have a vice chair.
I want to leave it in. I'm not supporting a 5-member organization, not at this stage. I think having 7 is reasonable for our first go-round here.
This is an important juncture.
To decide that.
Mike, are you okay with having vice chair?
Because that's the first time.
With having a vice
Having vice chair and separating the offices?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with secretary and treasurer being combined, but I wouldn't want to see the others combined.
I do because I am the treasurer of a public entity and we are not the same
Okay, well, you
person.
asked for my opinion.
Yeah, okay. Frank. I'm getting your opinion. Frank?
Well, it sounds like your concern is financial and avoiding any misuse of funds. And as long as that's in there somewhere in one of these many documents, I'm fine with whatever you decide. I just feel, you're asking a lot of a small group of people. So I'm fine with, quite honestly, sitting here, I'm fine with 5 or 7, and maybe 7 is the magic number, but not more than that, that's for sure.
Rocky?
Well, I think that's the question we need to answer first.
That's a later question.
If,
Yeah. Well, let's decide it now. So do we want 5 or do we want 7?
I don't seem to care either way.
7.
But
7?
Because I think we want more of the interests
Right, I agree.
represented.
Frank?
And you can divide up the duties easier too.
Right.
You've got a larger workforce within which to assign specific duties.
Okay.
so we're gonna
7, I lean towards
Okay
7.
with 7?
specify that it's
Okay,
gonna be
we're gonna go with
a
7.
minimum 7.
Are
Not
you
a
wanting a
minimum.
change in the bylaws, or are you just deciding how many initial board members you'll appoint?
I'm fine with 7 forever, so.
Okay?
So yours
Well, I think what
wanting
it
to
says
change
is at
it.
least 5.
Right.
It says
Yeah,
5 to
no more
7.
than 7, yeah.
But our
Okay.
preference is to have the 7.
7, our preference is to have
Okay.
7.
So if the preference is to have 7, then we're talking about 7 in the bylaws.
Yes, do you want to change just to?
Just 7, period.
Just make it 7 and be
Required
done
to
with
have
it.
7.
Okay. It is nice to have a range so that if you lose somebody, you don't necessarily have to immediately replace them is
Exactly.
one thing to think
You
about.
can take your time and find the person that's appropriate to be replaced.
So,
But we didn't give them a range, we said 7.
yeah,
Yeah, I know,
So
we're
we
not,
either
we're
have to
going,
say
we're going
minimum
with,
7
we're going
or
with 7.
7 to 12.
It's 7.
Well, the
But that's
attorney
not a range.
expressed why a range has value.
I'm just not clear if in the bylaws we want a range. Were you just saying that you liked the range?
We're going with 7. That was the consensus. We can't vote, but we have a consensus.
Okay.
Is that the consensus? Because to me, minimum is 7, and I don't care if
I don't want to do minimum of 7, Rocky, because then it can get out of hand. Meetings, the larger they get, the less you accomplish.
Yes.
The attorney is saying 5 to 7 gives us some latitude, I believe.
It is nice to have a range so that if
we're
you
nowhere
lose
near
somebody, you
consensus then.
don't have to immediately replace them.
Well,
I
you're
think-
saying 7 only, we're saying 5 to 7, or
Okay,
you're saying 5
let me
to
go
7.
around
I'm
one more
saying
time.
7 minimum.
Can I ask
Please.
a question first?
It's not that complicated.
If it's 7 and somebody resigns, the board doesn't have to stop working, right? You're just trying to get back to 7.
Yeah, it has to, before it can really officially act in any capacity, it needs to appoint another member, elect another member to be at 7, because the bylaws require 7 at all times.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Okay.
See, that's why 5 to 7 gives you that latitude.
In that case, 5 to 7 does make sense, because somebody resigns and all of a sudden our board can't do anything.
Right.
So we don't want that.
Why would that be? That's stupid.
That's why I do a
Sorry,
range
because
in the bylaws, so that you're not in that position.
I've been on boards that had a certain number, and somebody left, and we still could do business till we replaced that person. It didn't make the whole organization stop working.
Well, the
Just depends
bylaws
on
might
what's in your bylaws.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. I'm sorry.
I think we're fulfilling our legal obligations in the fulfillment of this organization, so I'm fine with 5 to 7.
5 to 7.
5 to 7?
Yeah.
5 to 7?
But we want to have 7.
And in that same vein, again, because of that range, I do support the ability to combine offices like secretary and treasurer, again, because having the potential of 4 out of the 5 members in a position like that, I think, asks a lot.
All right. Well, somewhere
Go
near,
to page 6, and it defines what the duties are, and I don't support having a combined secretary-treasurer.
well, I think what's important is who are the signatories for the dispersal of funds.
Right.
Which would usually be set in your financial policies.
So 5 to 7 consensus? Okay.
So we're gonna have a chair, since we're required.
Yeah.
So, do we want to be able to combine secretary and treasurer or not?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
No.
I'm okay if the board's okay with it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a yes. Do we want a vice chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I will leave that as is then. And just to clarify on the actions, if your board is set at a specific number in your bylaws, it's not that staff can't do anything or, all of a sudden you have to stop, but the board shouldn't be taking action without filling that role.
Right.
Again, that makes no sense to me.
I agree. We
You're
should change
If
the
you're missing one
statute.
person, that doesn't mean everything stops.
Yes, it is a problem.
But I guess in 4.1, do we need to change it so that the secretary and treasurer could be combined? Because right now, if I read that right, it says the office of chair, secretary, and treasurer may not be held simultaneously by the same individual.
Yes, but it could be held by 2 people.
So we're gonna change that
Meaning
wording.
one person cannot hold all 3?
Yes.
Right.
But a person
That's
could hold 2.
I
the
see what
way
you're
it's,
saying.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's required by the statute is that one person can't hold all
I see.
3 of
Okay,
those
the
roles.
chair, I was reading it, you're saying all 3 of those can't be held by one person.
Correct.
We're not saying one person couldn't hold 2 of those 3.
Correct, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, anything else in Article 4? All of it.
I think so.
Nothing? Article 5?
Okay, fine. Make a face.
Are we reviewing the document as a whole right now?
Anything you have questions on or want
Well,
changes
I
to?
had brought it up before, as a commission, the initial board will be selected by the commission, correct?
Correct.
The subsequent board will be selected by the existing board of the DMO.
Correct.
Is the future commission comfortable with that?
Sort of.
Possibly, if some of my other questions later are answered in a certain way.
Well, just, maybe you hold that thought.
Yeah, maybe that's it later.
Yeah, let's
Rosalie, because this will be an independent 501c6, is that even really a question?
I think it's going to be an issue with the IRS if the commission appoints the entire board. There might be options to appoint less than a majority of directors on the board.
Because of
I'm not
keeping the two
talking-
entities separate.
Yes.
Right.
I'm not talking about the commission appointing subsequent boards. I'm talking about them maybe vetting candidates to be,
And then
to
like
apply to
an
the board.
advisory way or something, or not?
Well, there was a discussion about, creating this entity so that it operates on its own and letting it go. And also, people who were a part of the survey said that they were concerned that the DMO will be held too tightly so that you're not empowering it to behave the way you normally would, like a DOCA. We don't do that for DOCA. DOCA's 501c6.
We recognize in our discussions that there are always going to be a push and pull over control of the organization, city commission versus the DMO. I just threw it out for discussion. Whatever you decide, it's fine.
Because the hammer that you have is the funding.
The contract.
The
Yeah.
contract.
That's always the
Definitely.
hammer, and then
It's always the
the reasons for deny or sever the relationship are the hammer.
That's right, that's the hammer.
I think we may need to hold off the
Yeah.
final comment on that until we see what's in the MOU.
Yeah, I have questions about that area.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Any other questions then about the bylaws?
Yeah, I have a question about 4.10. The
Sure.
very last sentence, it says the executive director attends all board meetings except when the board goes into the executive session. And it would seem to me, unless it's about that specific executive director or personnel decision, the executive director should be in all the executive sessions so they know what the heck's going on. You're shaking your head no.
I mean, usually that would be at the discretion of the board if for some reason they felt like it wasn't appropriate for the executive director
What
to
would
be
that be?
there. I would think it would only be really in performance review, like
Well,
you're
I
saying.
agree.
But there may be other situations that, usually it's just at the discretion of the board. We can require that. I'm not sure what the benefit necessarily of that would be to
Well,
require that in the bylaws.
public authority that I sit on, we've had executive sessions and our director attends them. We have not done
Sure, yeah.
his evaluation. He would not be attending that unless when we invite him back in.
And that's usually what a board would do, so we can require that in the bylaws if you want.
I mean, they might be talking about, heaven forbid, a lawsuit or some other thing that person, they should know about that unless it's a personnel situation.
And I don't know why the board would exclude them, so if we want to require that, we can. I'm not sure what we're trying to guard
The sentence
against.
says, except when the board goes into executive session to meet without the executive director present. It should specify the only reason they would not be there is if it's that specific thing involving their evaluation. To me, it just sounds like they're excluding that person.
Okay. Do you all like to require that?
It's just, maybe it's the way you've got it worded in here.
Okay. Would it be better if we had a specific saying executive session where they have specifically excluded them? Is the concern that it sounds like any executive session
what it
they would
sounds
be
like.
excluded?
That's what I'm
Oh,
reading.
okay.
It
Sure, I
sounds
can
like
clarify
they
that.
don't get to go to the executive session.
Okay, I can certainly clarify that. Yeah,
It just needs to be clarified.
sure.
Because these aren't public meetings, I'm wondering if an executive session is, by definition,
Even allowed?
no, that would be the
It is
only
definitely
thing that would be an executive session would be when they ask the executive director not to be there.
Well,
There might be some
involved.
other situations as well, like a lawsuit or other, issue that would create liability.
Okay.
Yeah.
think it's just, I apologize, it's just kind of the wording. It's an affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of all directors, comma, at a properly called meeting, comma, at which a quorum is present, comma, is necessary and sufficient, comma, to make, comma, alter, comma, amend. I'm not the expert English person, but that is a gigantic sentence with too many things in it to make it make sense.
My apologies. Which sentences?
Is that you then?
Is
I
it?
didn't write it, but I love comments.
What article are you in?
I'm looking at, I'm just randomly picked the last article under amendment. It just should say a 2/3 vote is required, you know, at a meeting that's been noticed, and you have to have a quorum. I mean, simplify it.
Sure, yeah.
And written notice shall be given in advance, blah, 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 you know. It's just the longest run-on sentence that I've seen for, you know, the whole thing has got a lot of those gigantic, very long sentences that lawyers love to argue about. Sorry, lawyers, this was no offense to them. I love lawyers.
I have no preference. I don't care about sentences that being limited to a noun, a verb, and an adverb. I don't care.
That's what it should be.
Well, then you got about 6 different sentences to try and express the same single thought that was expressed. I don't care. It'll be yours in the future.
Okay, what would we like to talk about next?
Where are we at?
Did you have, you had one
We're at
question?
7 now.
You had a question about that you were waiting till we talked about the number.
When we get to MOU.
Okay, all right, let's
I
move
have
on to the
questions.
next thing on,
I think I'm good with
which
where we're at on
is,
that.
do we need to look at this transient lodging tax sheet and move past that? Okay. MOU?
Yes, with the MOU.
Okay, MOU.
All right, start at the start.
Okay, our general overview.
Yeah, so it begins with just an introduction of the purpose of the MOU, what the roles are of the two different parties, the city and the DMO. Article 2 is about the agreement term. We've had it starting whenever it's signed, and then ending June 30th, 2027 would be the initial term. Presumably the parties would hopefully sign an amendment to extend it and renew the contract. Article 3 is about terminating it. It can be terminated any time if both parties agree to terminate. If either party breaches the agreement, it can be terminated after giving notice if the other party doesn't cure that breach. And the city also has the ability to terminate for what we call some serious breaches, so financial mismanagement, financial negligence, or in the city's discretion, anything that would damage the reputation of the city. So that gives the city quite a bit of latitude to terminate. Sorry, unilaterally. Article 4 is about the services that will be provided by the DMO and some governance issues. Requires the DMO to implement these tourism-related strategies and to provide a management coordination plan in the first 6 months of the contract. And that explains what would be included in that. The city commission has to approve that plan before it's finalized, right? So if the commission doesn't like the plan, it would return it and request changes until it was approved, yeah.
Okay, some of my questions are regarding that. First, let's skip down a little. Well, when it comes to the funds, we disperse $125,000, and then there's 2 sets of $125,000. One's the seed money, and one's the regular funding, right?
Yeah, and so the seed money is just a one-time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the 125 is split.
Are you on a specific page?
This is Article 6.
It's farther down in
Are you
that.
talking about 6 on page 3?
Yeah,
where it
it's
says
under
funds?
6.
Under funds?
I mean, I know we're talking about 4, but I'm connecting it. Well, let me just get to what I was going to. The money that we are distributing to the DMO is something that would be approved in our budget. It's set aside. That's accounted for. That money goes out separate from that plan.
Correct, yeah, it's not tied to those
Right.
deliverables, which
So,
it could be,
The
right?
question comes is, what if the plan never gets approved? And yet the money is approved in the budget, and therefore the plan continues because it was budgeted.
Yeah, that's definitely a risk
Do
under
we
that.
have a breach? Because
No,
I don't know.
it's not, it wouldn't be a breach if they were continuing to work on it and make the changes that you asked and returned it. So we can, though, require something like a deadline within which it has to be finalized or
if the
something.
plan's not approved, it doesn't get funded. To me, if the plan is not approved, it shouldn't be moving forward.
I think, and
We've had this
correct me if I'm wrong,
situation, I will
James.
say before, where we had an economic development strategy that was never approved, but the budget was approved, and therefore it just went on.
I think
and
part
so
of there does have to be some money for the plan to be created.
Sure.
So, and that's
But
up
would
to
that
all
be
of
the
you
seed
how you
money?
want to do it.
I mean, that would be the seed money, not necessarily the funding for the year.
Yeah, we can wait. I mean, I don't think I'm the person to answer this. I can effectuate whatever
I just
you want
want to make
here.
sure there's a way that a plan is not being put forward and spent money on unless it's actually been approved.
I mean, so let's say after 6 months, they say we need another month to get our plan together. The commission says, yep, great, go get it done. They come back after a month and say we need another month. And they say, great, but this is your last time. They come back in a month and they say, sorry, we didn't get it, we need another 2 months. At that point, I assume they can say, no,
We're not.
you have not created a plan consistent with this. We've given you 2 extensions.
Yes.
We can start the process. We're giving you a 10-day notice to terminate the contract.
Right, if they fail to submit a plan, that would be a breach of the contract because they're specifically required to. However, we haven't specifically required like a timeline within which they have to fix the plan. So they turn in a plan and you hate it, and they keep making the changes you ask, but you still don't approve it, that's not a breach unless we want to change something in here
So I think
about.
that would get to your concern.
Yeah, how long does that go?
Well, I mean, that's your discretion. That's the commission's discretion, right? It's like, okay, you got really, we went from 75%, now we got it to 80, now we're at 99, come back one more time and it's good, right? Or you guys are going the complete wrong way, you're ignoring everything we're saying, we're not gonna give you another public dime, either get on board or we're gonna move towards termination. You've been put on notice. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know if that gets to what your concern is to address that.
So I think what might make sense then is, because we've said it will be, that the general funds will be dispersed quarterly, so we could say something like after the second disbursement, or you could make the second one dependent on having a plan approved or something like that. It depends on which one you want to start that at. Do you want to start that at the beginning? Do you want to start it after second, third disbursement?
But it does make sense that we do have to give them some operating capital up front.
I don't know, we can have more discussion about that.
Especially when you're gonna try to hire this director on the
Yeah, I mean, 6 months, you're gonna hire somebody, you're gonna get a board put together, you're all gonna get on the same pages, and you're gonna do that all in 6 months. Right?
You can't get anybody for $125,000. You want this changed to the MMO?
Well, it states as a management organization, but I was trying to drive the point home because I felt the reason we have failed in the past was not for lack of advertising.
Right. I'm just asking.
But for lack of
Do
management.
you want to change, instead of saying DMO, call it the DMMO, so that the management is clearly in the title of?
That's my personal preference.
Okay. Does anybody object to that? Consensus? Okay.
Okay. I
We'll
guess
make it so.
getting back to Commissioner Smith.
Yes,
Was
keep
everyone all right? Or is there agreement concerning
I get what you're
making
saying.
the language a little more clear as to what would lead to a breach and the expectations of the plan being approved by the commission within a certain time frame? Otherwise, it would be spelled out as a breach of the contract.
The other
How do
thing is you could just make payment dependent on it so that you're not necessarily ending the contract, but you're not paying anymore until you get that plan, which is kind of a nice, might be something you would want to take advantage of.
Well, the key here is that they get seed capital.
Right.
So they can operate on that.
Right.
Until the other part is approved.
Right.
And that's a sufficient safeguard.
Yeah.
I don't think it's enough money to get the organization up and running.
Well, then they better get a plan together.
They better get a
But
plan.
how are they gonna get a plan together if,
Well, that's kind of chicken and egg thing.
Sure, I agree.
How do you do one in the absence of the other?
Well, keep in mind that there is free rent, there is free internet, free parking, free security,
Right, so they're.
you get a lot of free. Because if you go on the marketplace, then that would be a concern.
I know, but
If the
again,
125,
they're gonna need
the
at
first
least
quarter
3
or
to 5
something,
months to
you
get
know,
the
as
thing
a
up and
startup,
running, and then they're gonna try to get a management plan out of $125,000. I
Well,
don't think it can be done.
they get a fourth, they get 125, then they get a fourth after the first quarter, they get a fourth of another 125, then after another quarter,
so
they
I
get.
think
Well, I feel better about that then.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that.
You're going to have your initial exposure, and then after that, it's what you control, what you monitor.
So I'm
They
thinking
need to be able to get going.
So I think what makes sense then is if they haven't gotten a plan approved by the time that third quarter rolls around, they don't get that payment until the plan is approved. Does that
Yeah, and they risk
make sense?
the following.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to write in here just a check in at 3 months?
I think in
Just
year
to make-
one, I think
Yeah,
we should.
just to make sure they're not headed up the wrong tree and then we don't find out for 6 months.
First 6 months to me is critical, and they need to report back into the city commission.
Well, I think there's a party that speaks to the implementation. There's a party that speaks to the implementation and getting back to the city commission based on how things are going.
Yes.
It's already here.
Yeah, but we haven't required, for instance, reporting to the commission within the first 3 months. So that's something that I could add in.
But people do, anyone needs a little bit more time
I agree.
to get going, because if they're in meetings all the time, they'll never get anything done.
So I said 6 months is
Yeah,
the
but coordinate
first
that with
check-in.
the dispersal of
Then again,
city
you're gonna be
funds.
telling us about what's going on anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you're also going to have one of you or one of the commissioners going to be sitting on their board.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah, okay. We'll leave it as
You
is.
good with 6 months, Mike?
Yeah, with the fact that Mr. Graham can report back to us and our commission liaison can report back on progress.
Okay. I just feel I'm trying to coordinate it with the dispersal of funds. You're going to give 125, and you're going to give 125 in 3 months, right?
No, a fourth, which, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
Whatever it is. 30. I was trying not to get to the 6 month mark
250,
Okay.
something
Yeah.
like that.
without
I-
feeling
That's what they
comfortable.
get after the first
I
quarter.
would like to have a check-in at 3 months.
Because those are the initial
For the
steps.
first
and
year, initially, I don't think that's a bad idea.
Right.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
And after that can be,
Are we on a particular section?
we were kind of under six,
I would
six.
like
You started talking about
to,
the funds.
can I go back to 4, just to finish that off?
Yeah, 4,
The last section of 4.4, we put in here that, the DMO board must adopt the bylaws that the commission approves initially, right? So that initial draft that's approved by the commission, that board must adopt. Because that wouldn't necessarily be required, right? If you could appoint a board and they could look at this and say, well, we're gonna do different bylaws. So it requires that they adopt this, and then also that they must get approval from the commission for the duration of this contract if they want to amend the bylaws. So that if there was some significant change, like removing the ex officio member that's appointed by the commission, for instance, or other things like that, the commission would have the ability to not allow that change to the bylaws.
And then assuming this was extended after being successful for 2 years, that would remain.
Yes, that would apply
Unless the city
for,
agreed to remove or amend section 4.4.
yeah, unless you changed this contract,
Yep.
then it would continue to
Still
apply for
binding
the life of
moving
that,
forward.
any renewal term.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
The other reason why that people are probably having problems hearing is because we can hear the system going on, and that always causes problems. It'd be nice if we could just shut it off.
Can we go on to section 8?
Hang on.
I want to go on to section 7.
I got one more thing on section 4, and I want to go to section 6. But on 4, on section 4.2, under marketing strategies, where it lists the focus areas, I think it's important that that list matches what's in the bylaws, and it doesn't. Bylaws don't say agritourism, including the beverage industry. It lists agritourism and beverage industry separate. And the bylaws also mention retail and restaurant, which are not included here. And those need to be added, because I think
agree. Which one do you like better?
Everything's got to be.
There's been a lot of discussion with that, Ogden.
I like the and. I like the way it's stated, to say and this, not, first one kind of groups them, and the second one.
They're separate.
What is the beverage industry?
Well,
Distillery,
Breweries.
brewery,
Bars, coffee shops.
Bubble tea.
Drinkables.
That's not an industry.
When we talk about tourism, it sure
Coffee
is.
shops.
Coffee shops are part of your tourism product.
yeah.
I
So,
mean, I tend to think of the spirits and wine kind of, and brew in a separate category. Beverages is like, we're not promoting the Coke industry or the Pepsi industry or the soda pop industry unless they're making gourmet soda pop like they do at OCB. But yeah, it's very broad.
okay.
Because
Well, as
wineries
Matthew said, coffee's a
are
big
agritourism also.
As you said, coffee is a big industry of itself.
We're not growing any coffee in Clackamas County as far as I know.
We're selling a bunch of it.
We're selling it, but we're not doing it.
so to clarify, is your preference the list in the MOU or the list in the bylaws?
Bylaws.
Or neither?
Bylaws, I think.
Okay.
To me, the MOU is going to carry more weight than the bylaws.
But we're gonna make them.
We want to
Yeah,
match the,
yeah.
The wording's gonna be the same in both documents.
Right. Okay, so I will use the list in the bylaws in the MOU.
Were historic sites listed in the bylaws?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, anything else on 4 before we move on to 5, 6, and 7?
Funding, 6, I'm on 6, and I'm confused, and
Okay.
Mr. Zook, we may need, I don't know if we're gonna need your help or not. The room tax document we were given with the finances, we're collecting, other than the COVID year, we're collecting right around, even over $200,000 a year.
yeah, 218.
Why are we saying we're gonna fund this organization at $125,000? What are we doing with the other 75?
The other 75 goes back into the contingency.
Which already has $900,000 in it.
Right, but we don't know how, there's two things. We really don't know how much money we will be getting in the future from TLT, one. Number two, this is kind of and we don't know how this will operate. Instead of piling on a lot of money onto this entity, there's a certain kind of prudence, financial prudence, that we're exercising so that we can see how it works. They can always ask for more money. This contract allows that. But starting off, it's important to see how it works instead of throwing money at the situation.
But at the end of the day, the number is what y'all want it to be.
The number's what?
What you want it to
What
be.
you want it to be.
So it was
My
a
concern
number that was put in there just to start.
Yeah.
One concern that I have, if you look at the list of qualifications and experience on the executive director, we're gonna spend all of our money on salary and fringe benefits for an
My point
executive director and not have any money to do anything.
That was my point exactly.
Plus, I wonder, are we complying with state law in terms of how much money we have to spend on tourism from the transient room tax?
Well, we're way under that. I mean, because 30% is actually allowable by state law to...
30?
Yeah, 30. And all the other, and that's in the law. Matter of fact, there's some legislation going on now whereby there are certain individuals or certain organizations that want to use the TLT tax for other things other than tourism, as you know.
Supportive of tourism,
Supportive of tourism.
Right. We're talking about infrastructure. That's what the league is talking about taking to the legislature. So it can include police services, it could include road, it could include, and I said, well, if that's limited to a certain percentage, I'm supportive of it. But, you know, if you're saying, I mean, that's Beaverton saying, oh yeah, we want to use some of our TLT to take care of, you know, our police department, which is policing these different things. And I said, yeah, but then that's problematic.
So I guess the number could be what the commission's comfortable with. I think that's what we were thinking was, let's get it up. And like James said, is that there's nothing that prevents the organization from coming and saying, you know, we've got our plan adopted, or, you know, here's where we're at financially. We're requesting additional funding to do A, B, and C, that then the commission has the sole discretion to approve or not.
Yeah.
The other side too, yeah, do we, I hope we never see another COVID, right? But, you know, do we want to guarantee a number of a guaranteed dispersal, even if we don't collect that? We're in a good position where we could just tap the 900,000, right? This isn't a cutting it so close that there's not going to be funds there. But I guess our thought was coming out to kind of do it in increments, just because of the concerns that we heard about how is this going to operate. Now, if we want to make it a different number, we certainly can. I don't have any issue with that.
Well, and along with that, I'm bothered with the fact that we're going to charge the organization back for Mr. Graham's time.
So am I. Big
I'm
time.
not.
10% or 25.
That's just part of the job. We want this group to succeed. Here's $125,000. Oh, by the way, you got to give us back 10% of it to pay for staff support. So we're really only giving them 112.
Yeah, see, we've essentially removed tourism from economic development and handed it to these people. So why should they pay us a management fee to manage them?
Right.
25,000, 10%. I mean, are you telling me that Mr. Graham, say he's a $100,000 a year job, he's going to spend 500 hours a year doing this? I don't think so. If you want to do some smaller number like 3%, okay, maybe. But we have stepped away from the management of tourism. We shouldn't be getting paid to manage the managers of tourism.
I agree.
So the city really, I mean, if we're not going to pay for it, then, I guess my position would be, why have a liaison? Who's going to pay for the liaison? The general fund?
What were his jobs?
The financing
maybe
that's
we
going to
don't
happen?
need that.
Right, I mean, that's the discussion, is if we're going to spend time on tourism, why wouldn't we make ourselves whole?
The city still needs to spend time on tourism. It's part of our...
How much time is he going to spend to manage the managers of tourism? I just don't see it. And I don't remember the initial job description when Mr. Graham was hired, but I think tourism was a component of it. We're actually removing that from his responsibilities, and I think his involvement will be minuscule. That's why if you're going to charge anything, which I'm not even in favor of anything, 25,000 or 10% is too much.
I think that, and Matt Zook could probably provide some more insight, but I think that does have some impact on the general fund going forward. And I think that it's important to explain what that impact could be, because right now, the tourism funding, a certain allocation is taken out of the tourism funding right now by finance department. And then the remaining 90% I have available to spend right now. But that's because, and we haven't spent a lot of money on it because everything that is provided, everything is built in. The rent is free, everything is free, so you're not spending that money on those kinds of things. And so it's basically incubating this DMO in city government for 2 years. But I think there are consequences to the general fund, and someone probably should explain what that is.
We've got more money in contingencies than that, in any one project. I mean, that's,
Matt, I think you're getting called up from the bench.
yeah, what's the percentage of our biannual budget of 25,000 over whatever it's 36 million? I can't remember. 380 million.
Next to Michael.
So,
Maybe you could restate the question specifically, because I heard a lot of comments, but I want to make sure I'm responding to.
It's about the percentage that we're asking to have a staff to pay partially for part of the staff liaison's time. And
what's the impact of $25,000 on the city's budget?
And so the question is, what impact does it have on the general fund going forward?
25,000? Nothing.
There it is. That's my statement.
But there is a connection. I appreciate what you're saying about the time spent by Mr. Graham. It's really not an impact to the general fund discussion. It really isn't. It's recognition of whatever time he's got. And I'm not defending the position that's there. It's an arbitrary, like Mr. Conkle said, it's an arbitrary place to start if you want to start with at all. You can return it to zero. But one thing to keep in mind, and I think, James, you mentioned this earlier, legally the city is required to spend 70% of all tourism on tourism. I don't know when this decision was made, but the city just actually spends 90% of all of its tourism on, all of its DLT on tourism. So, and that's, it's been the way it's been budgeted for several years. The 10% that is spent on general services for the city is actually set aside out of the economic development budget. It's not even part of the 250 that you see in the financials. So, the city really could legally tap into 30% of that. And basically, it's about 20. We bring in about $270,000 a year. What you're seeing in that financials is I'm talking budget, but it's about 250,000. We're below our budget as far as actuals go. So there is room to actually increase the amount of DLT that's spent on general services in recognition of the things that the city does do, not just his time, but the other police services, et cetera, the planning, et cetera, whatever you want to say. So I don't think it's illegal to have that. Whether or not you call it a fee, as described in this MOU, is up to you as far as optics. So,
I don't mind those associated expenditures, Matt.
yeah.
What I mind is, if I put a $100,000 tag on that position, and I say $25,000, then I'm essentially saying out of 2,080 hours in a work year, that position is going to dedicate 500 hours to assist in the that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, 3% makes sense. I'm okay with 3%. But 10% just seems like an exorbitant figure to charge the managers who are going to manage something that we have abdicated on. That's my position on it.
I mean, it just comes out of the general fund, right? At the end of the day, that's where we backfill it from. And, everyone knows general fund has the most pressure on it. We've brought police to tourism activities. We'll do communications with this organization, I would imagine. Matt and his team will be responsible for auditing this as part of our audit to make sure that the money trail is clean. I mean, there are multiple things we could be charging for that we're not in proposing here. Free rent, use of our facility. It's just trying to put the puzzle together with the funding sources that we have available to lessen you're right, $25,000, no big deal. We do it 10 times, it's $250,000. That's almost 10 cents of our general fund tax revenue that we bring in. So, we're just trying to look at it from the standpoint of, we know there's going to be involvement. there's going to be expectations that the city is involved to support this organization. So what that number is, I think, is what this group needs to kind of discuss and figure out.
I'm curious, do we charge South Fork Water Board for your efforts there?
Yes.
Yes, we certainly do.
Do you know what that number is?
It's about between 70 and 80,000.
70 to 80?
Yeah.
But that includes finance,
Yeah,
HR.
that's a different
Yeah, that's got other
animal. Yeah.
stuff.
So Cheryl on our Whereabout Consultant Online just texted me. Cheryl, you want to share a little context for what you see as typical?
Yeah, so the districts here, and again, I'm in California, the percentage is 2%.
Yeah.
California's different. I mean,
Why would the services be any different from a liaison in California than they are in Oregon?
well, we don't know if it's described as a liaison in California. It could be something totally different, different from state to state.
This is an administrative fee charged by the city that's administering a particular DMO? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And actually ours is a county organization, but yes, for a liaison that I work with at the county, and they actually also provide financial services. So it's, the percentage is 2%.
What about in Washington?
Don't know. I couldn't
I
speak
mean, the
to that.
question is, are we supportive of this organization, this DMMO's success or not? And what does it cost us to support that? And that's a pittance.
Well, I would be willing to have us come to a consensus on a lower number, but I think 2% is not reasonable. Rocky, please, go ahead.
There's a lot.
Good.
All right, do you have more on the, we're still under 6. Do you have more on 6?
Yeah, well, it's in 7,
Sorry.
but it has to do with finance.
Okay.
It has to do with the finance.
So this asks, I think this goes on to another
Are you on
question.
6?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
fine.
still.
Okay, fine. Okay, that's fine.
Still, maybe a couple questions, and then I'm going to throw out something else I think fits into this conversation we just had.
6 and 7.
First of all, when you say 250 is what's essentially coming in, but we have on paper about 218, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have 900,000 that has been set aside. Our seed money of 125 is coming out of that 900,000, and then the funding for the following, the upcoming year is coming directly from that year's transient room tax, right?
Yeah, but essentially it's all the same, right?
I
It's
understand.
the same
I just
source.
wanna- Okay, and then continuing on, that would come from that. So what we're saying is if we wanted to expand that to, 200 or something, we could do that. Okay, when we get into, I guess I want to touch on what Commissioner O'Donnell said, where essentially we're taking tourism from economic development, which I think in a sense is true. The next question becomes, and I had a question following on and I don't know where it is but there was something along here that there's no grant funding. There's no grants process within the DMO.
Right. This DMO is not designed to give out grant funds.
Okay, so then what that implies is there is no grant funding for events in this town. If we strip tourism completely away from economic development, because the DMO has no ability to facilitate that grant process, correct?
I think that the special, not special, but the city-sponsored
event.
public event comes out of a different kitty.
It hasn't always.
It's not coming out of the DMO. The DMO's not doing that.
Well, no, but some of that money has come out of tourism.
Well, right now, the program is coming out, it's not coming out of the, because when you requested that in the beginning, my understanding that it came out of a different, matter of fact, it came out of a different fund that was set aside specifically for that program. It did not come out of the tourism money.
It came out of general fund money.
It came out of general fund.
Okay, so we have shifted
We
from.
kind of
So none of-
sideboarded this money other than doing this work to set up the
Okay.
DMO.
So the money that we used to use for grants has continued to go into that transient room and stay there, and we've built a separate budget for the grant process for events.
Right.
Now, but wouldn't that still be a facet of tourism that's happening under the city's purview?
Yes.
Right?
So it's totally up to you as to whether or not you want to move that to the DMO.
Right. But we also have the ability to say that, let's say out of the, 218,000, 200, whatever thousand we get, is that 200,000 is what we decide goes to the DMO, and maybe the extra 18,000 goes into helping with, events. So we're setting aside some money to help with those because, this is a separate conversation in some regards, but I don't want us to forget events and the priority that citizens of this town have told us about events and how to solve that problem. If we aren't fixing that event process and funding opportunity under the DMO, then we really need to figure out how we fix that in the city's purview, and if that is still called tourism, which I think it still is.
But
how does that work?
But right now, what is the source of funds for special events, Tom?
Well,
Right,
it could be a mix, but right now, we've budgeted under city budget. In the past, it came out of transient room tax.
Correct.
I'm saying in the future, with another hotel, maybe those events are dual funded partly from that. If that's not a DMO thing, then that's something we might have to address in a separate way, because the DMO doesn't necessarily gonna be dealing with grants.
I don't see the
It's a
DMO dealing with grants.
Okay, well, it says we can't.
We talk about
Right?
grants, are we talking about giving grants or
Giving
applying
grants
for
for special
They
events, for events.
They can
or
apply for grants, I presume.
First City Celebration, the Beer Fest at EOT,
Yeah,
those
okay.
grants that we did, the special,
Okay.
the
I don't
event
see that as
grants.
a DMO responsibility.
Why don't we leave them where they are for
Well,
now?
I'm just asking, because I'm not,
I'm not saying we can't change it in the future.
But I think, right, Matt, when we pulled this year's funding from the general fund, we identified it and we used general fund money to fund that grant process.
Right, yeah, you would have,
There's no reason we couldn't use
sure, but,
the transient room tax, but we made that decision. I think historically we
right,
did.
because we were protecting
The-
the money we had.
Right,
for
freeze it
right.
and get this process
Right,
done.
and we could have a discussion later if hotels come online that we do a different breakout of that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure in that conversation about what is under city's purview and DMO, that we still understand there's still some pieces sort of
We're gonna
tourism
do.
related that are still, okay. I just had to go through that for my own
Yes.
understanding.
In the organizational documents, we do talk about the role of the executive director in
Right.
coordinating with events and promoting events.
Okay,
But
so
there is
there'd be
no
some-
mention of a grant program.
Sure, got it.
Yet.
I don't want.
It's done both ways, and some DMOs do run a grant program,
Yep.
but
We will
we
be,
didn't
the
contemplate that for this one.
DMMO will be coordinating
Yeah, that, I
with
just wanted to,
the city on
that
those
clarifies
events,
a
but
lot.
they will not be putting them on or supporting them financially. That's the city going to do. They continue to do that. Or our organizations that get the grants are going to be doing it, not us.
And of course, you'll have a city liaison to discuss
That's right.
with the DMO as to those activities.
Okay, so where are we on
That was-
7?
I think
Are we done
We're
with
still
6?
on 6, but I think
Okay.
we might
We're
be.
still on 6, but personally, 7.1, I would just strike that whole thing. Keeping track of hours and they don't roll over to the next, that just seems tacky to me. It requires whatever amount of time it requires.
Well, I want to just eliminate the last sentence. It's just ridiculous.
I'd just kill that whole thing.
So we want to make sure we're getting our bang for our buck, so I don't have any problem generally keeping an idea of, because somebody's going to ask how many.
Okay, well, eliminate the last sentence for sure then.
Yeah, the last sentence for sure, but how much time are we spending on, during the initial ramp-up period, there's going to be a lot of time. As it gets its own feet and gets its own process, I could see less time.
And you said that should be 10% and not 8, right?
It's 10.
10.
Do we have consensus to strike that last sentence in 7.1?
And I'm still opposed to 10. I think it's exorbitant.
Then throw
Well,
out another
it's-
number. You want to go with 8?
No.
Says 8.
I'm talking about 7.1 where it says 10% of time.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying 10%
Okay,
of
all
the
right,
fee.
just so we're
Yeah.
clear.
Yet.
Time, we're talking about time.
And then consensus to remove that last sentence, is that?
I agree with Mike, it takes what it takes.
Yeah, I'm fine with striking that sentence.
Okay.
We got it.
Okay, so what about 7.2? We have an objection to 10%. It says in one place 8%.
Well, that, as I said, it was.
I know,
for the
but
time, right?
I'm just throwing it out there for,
I said what I had to say.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did too. I would take it to 0, personally. I might be able to be convinced to some small percent, but certainly not 10. Not when we're only gonna give the organization $125,000 a year and then take 10% off of that. We won't even pay for an executive director. One of the ways we can guarantee this thing won't work is if we starve it of resources. It's gotta have money to do stuff.
I think it should, I mean, if you ask me, I think it should be more than 125,000 for the seed money, because I don't think we can hire somebody and get the thing up and running for that amount of money. But I have no problem with the city charging a reasonable administrative fee, or whatever we want to call it, in exchange for services. It could be 5%, it doesn't have to be 10%, but, you know.
I just want to mention that, I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight, I don't really care. But keep in mind, once again, that the DMO does not pay rent, and all the other things is going to get free. So it's not just like they're going to be, you have to keep that in mind. We're not, it's just, yeah. So it's going through an incubator process for a couple of years, on top of getting seed money, which is $125,000 in one lump sum, on top of getting $125,000 per quarter. I mean, so broken down per quarter. So they're really getting a lot of resources that's not accounted for here.
And it's got to come from somewhere, as my friend would say.
So there is an argument to be made to just let it work and see what happens, because they can always come back and ask for more money.
I don't want to start counting those kind of contributions, because we've made them to other organizations in the past, $1 for rental of an office and such. That's a fantasy count. I just say that we don't charge them 10%. And I start at 0, and we can have the discussion where it goes from there.
Well, let's start at 10 and go down, so.
I'll pick a number. Here we go.
What if we didn't charge them and we just took 10% from the TRT money?
Same impact, it's just indirect.
Well, if they get to keep their 10%, we just help fund ECDEV, who's gonna be supporting tourism from the lump sum that's available.
Well, ECDEV has abdicated tourism.
No, they aren't.
That way
There's
their
still
whole,
some toe in the water for tourism and economic
I like
development.
that idea.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
I support that.
Okay, you got
so
3.
that would be more of a budgeting exercise, I think, that we're gonna go
Right.
through. It's not part of this contract. That'll be through the budget committee process.
Yeah.
But that would be one way to get to.
It's the way you allocate expenses for.
Right, okay, so we've got 3 people on this
Heat and lights
that
and
agree
whatever.
that that's a way to go. What about you? You want 0, so what about you?
I don't care.
We're gonna have to work through it during the budget process.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you trying to tempt me to chair the budget committee?
That's right, that's what.
Because you know how I am.
I saw your application in there today.
Yeah,
No, you
yeah.
didn't. If you did, it's a forgery, and we need to
I'm gonna
investigate
definitely
it.
be considering that.
So just for clarification, so where are we? Just so that she gets.
I think right now, we're leaving it at 125. That's gonna go to the organization with another 125 that will be distributing quarterly payments, 125 divided by 4. We're gonna take out the 7.2 fee that the organization is gonna be paying the city 10%. We're gonna have a discussion during the budget process if ECDEV is gonna receive a portion of the TRT money that's available and not accounted for through this agreement.
Because we're still gonna have the grant program that they're gonna be
Right,
administering.
we're gonna be discussing grants, we're gonna be discussing,
Exactly.
and if another
It's
organization
still involved
comes in.
in tourism. It cannot completely separate itself. Okay.
Mr. Graham, quick question. You've mentioned, free rent and free parking, whatever. Does that include office furniture, computers?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't, no.
Well, there's some things we need to work through with IT.
Yeah.
From a security
Right,
standpoint.
they can't get access to all of our stuff.
We're gonna have to have a discussion about wireless or access. We're not gonna give them access to our network.
Right.
Access into the building and times that they're gonna be able to use that, or if it's gonna be after hours, how we're gonna handle it. So generally speaking, we have a furnished office space. They're gonna have to bring their own computer, but we got a chair, we got a desk, we got electricity, right? So, but there's some things we gotta work out just from an access and security standpoint.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Anything else in 7?
I got
8.
nothing else in the document.
We got office space, any issues with that? Okay, let's move on.
I have something for in 8.7.
8.7, okay.
This also would come up as a topic at another meeting as well.
The right.
Commission chambers is not at City Hall. Commission chambers is this room. We have refused to eliminate the signing at City Hall that says Commission Chambers. It's still confusing to people. I was at a CHP meeting last night,
We have 2
and they were saying that we were going to have the next work session at City Hall. I said, no, it's not. It's at the PD. So we need to stop using the word Commission Chambers for City Hall. There is no Commission Chambers at City Hall. That
Public
sign needs to
safety
be
building.
taken off. There needs to be signage at this building that says this building is municipal court and city and commission chambers, just like it did at the old City Hall. People are still confused, and it's been over a year, 2 years, 3, I don't know. So we gotta stop doing that. So we need to change, we need to call that room and something.
It's a meeting
One of our
room.
consultants was
Meeting
locked a
room.
couple of years ago.
It's a city meeting.
I may go down there and pull that sign off that building myself if it doesn't happen soon. Well, it worked out well.
Sean, could you make note of that, because we might have some potential vandalism going on here. So, okay, so that's duly noted. Anything on 9? 10. 11, 12.
I don't think.
Other than the shall, its agents shall follow at all times after the city policies. Not must, they shall. Anything 13, 14, indemnification, that's pretty standard operating procedure. Relationship with parties, separate entities. Taxes, they have to deal with all their own stuff and take out their employment and social security, that's not our responsibility.
Under
They might-
13.
Could they contract with us for services?
Yeah, in addition to, we would just do another contract or
I mean, like,
amend this one.
like we do with South Fork, they do some of our
Yeah, we could,
HR stuff.
we
Okay.
could add in whatever you wanted.
What was your number, sir?
I was just curious, under 13, it talks, all work product created by the DMO shall belong to the DMO. Do we not want to have access to that as we have had with other?
Well, I wrote down share reports under my comment there.
I say that because of previous experiences with developmental issues. That work was done that we wanted access to after that agreement was severed. I mean, should we not be the
We're talking
beneficiary?
about the trust. We asked for some of their documents, and even though we were funding it, they said no.
See, I think if we're funding something, we should be the beneficiaries of the work product, or at least.
Let's turn to our experts.
Yeah, you can certainly, I mean, I would allow the DMO to continue to own that as well, but maybe give you like a non-exclusive license to use it or something like that, you know.
I thought even if it was joint ownership or something, there's a lot of work done with these agreements that we should have be the beneficiaries of whatever information was garnered.
What do other entities do? Other DMOs?
I don't know on this topic. Cheryl, do you know what other DMOs might do as far as ownership of work product of the DMO?
You know, a lot of times that's specific with the firm they're working with. So that's a contractual relationship with the marketing company. But if they pay for it, they own it.
But does the government body that funds the DMO ever have any right to those work
Have
products?
access, do we have access to it, Cheryl?
Not based on the ones I'm involved with, no.
So the DMO should retain ownership so that they can continue to use it, but you can require like a license to use it or have access to it, or just depending on how you want to set that up.
Yeah, because there's no legal requirement.
Is there something we can say that they share their work products with us?
You want to have joint access no matter what.
Yeah.
Right, there's no legal requirement that they can't share it with you or with us. There's no, I mean, it's
Well,
based
let's
on what
just
you
put
want.
that in there, Frank. Why don't we just say that they are, and they will share their work products with us?
Yeah, because there'll be relationships that are formed that if this thing fails, knowledge of those relationships may have future benefit to us. And we should have access to those.
They can ask us to restrict, but unfortunately, once they give it to us, it becomes a public document, so.
Yeah.
You could also potentially run into a situation if they do bring in additional funding from another source. I mean, if let's say you're commingling funds, you got a grant or you had a philanthropic investment that was specific to a product and it wasn't using public funds. So I guess it's just how far do we want to, not that we couldn't say, give it to us, just I could see situations where you could end up with some conflict there. I don't know why they wouldn't want to share, but, it's hard to come up with all the things.
You might not want to require, though, that those all be provided and become public record, like, for instance, donor lists with contact.
The one area where we've had challenges is photography.
Photographer.
Yeah. Photographers have very specific usage rights and videographers. So I cannot share their product with others without their permission.
I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about written reports.
Yeah, that should all be public information.
Okay.
But when we say all work product created by the DMO, I think that's going to
that includes all that stuff.
Very broad.
Yeah.
Well, can you make some suggestions of how we could get to what we're talking about?
Well, we are requiring the reports to be provided to the city commission. So I don't know if there's anything beyond that you want. I just need a little bit more explanation of what you...
I just want the reports.
Okay, so they'll be providing those under the contract.
As long as it's in here somewhere.
Okay, where are we now?
Okay, anything on 14, 15, 16? A lot more shells in there, that's good. Survival, under 16. Authority to sign. Is that correctly numbered? It goes to 16, 11, and then it goes 16 again. Should that be 17?
Mine does say 17.
Mine says 16.
Yeah, mine says 16 under authority to sign.
Is this, James, you had made a couple changes to it. Which version does the commission have?
You have 16, right?
Under authority to sign, it says number 16.
Right. You have 16? You have 16?
16 on the electronic copy.
It's not the version I'm looking at.
I'm looking at
I think you must have the
numbering.
version that James made the changes to. So it will say 17.
Fix that.
Yeah,
All right.
We'll fix that.
It looks like it was a typo. The miscellaneous provisions, which is directly before that, is also labeled 16, so it's just a numbering typo.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. Sorry.
All right.
Miscellaneous provision should be 16.
Yeah.
But then 17 would follow,
Okay.
We got two 16s on our.
Yeah, we have two 16s.
Yeah, you got 2 16.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I'm just worried about why mine is different than yours, so hopefully you have the final copy that I
Well,
sent.
it's the one we got on our packet, so that's all.
Hopefully we've been going through the right one.
You have the final. I think I made a change on the.
Okay, so
It's a
under
typo.
3B, we have destination marketing management organization, organizational structure and role.
Okay. Changing documents. We're switching to the organizational design.
Okay.
And we can. Yes. Okay, let's
do
take
that.
a quick break.
Yeah, come for that.
Fine?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just enjoying myself.
Good. That's the whole point of being here. See what kind of fun we have, Scott? You're not even paying attention here.
We're live.
So much fun.
Okay, our small break is over. Let's go back to organization structure and role. Is this the official chart?
Great, yeah, you should have five individual pages, which represents 4 documents. There's a purpose statement, an org chart, a 2-page role description, and then a 1-page matrix of roles and responsibilities.
And I've also included the questions on the application for future directors.
Correct.
Anybody want to add any questions to this?
Which one are we on?
Which order we want to go?
Let's go with the organizational chart.
Okay. Organizational chart is fairly straightforward. The executive director reports directly to the board of directors, which has the roles that we discussed with the optional 6th and 7th seat, and the ex officio member, like we talked about earlier. That board of directors has an indirect reporting role to the Oregon City Commission. That's the contractual agreement. And a dashed line showing that the Oregon City Commission also has some influence over the executive director, though the director does not report directly to you all. And then we have a list of partner organizations that's not intended to be all-inclusive, but is intended to be illustrative of the relationships that this executive director will manage.
So let's either call it the chair or the president, but not both.
Okay? We can remove president there, I think.
Yep, that's just confusing. Any questions on that?
I wonder if we should be describing board sheets 6 and 7 as optional, because we decided we really preferred having all 7.
Yep, so take out optional?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Or maybe you don't.
Not unless we change the bylaws.
No, we didn't, because we left it as a range from 5 to 7.
Yes.
So 6 and 7 are optional.
Well, it's okay. Okay.
Okay.
It's spelled out clearly in the.
It's spelled out clearly in bylaws.
In the bylaws. Okay,
Correct.
that's fine.
So
Anybody have any questions on the responsibility matrix?
On the organizational chart, since we kind of, on the organizational chart, because we implied that the ex officio member would be city commission, should there be a connection there? Or is that's spelled out anyway? I guess it doesn't need to be.
yeah, I think it's spelled out in the bylaws really clearly.
That's fine. Okay, sorry.
So if we are okay on the org chart, maybe we can move on to the purpose statement.
Did we decide that it's DMMO?
Yes, and I've already made that note that
Okay, you got that.
I will change that reference throughout. Yeah.
Okay, great,
Yep.
thank you, because it's on here too.
Sorry, I should have
I
said that
just
ahead
see
of
some
time.
clever little logo with DM something.
We'll leave it up to them.
Right.
But essentially, this purpose statement lays out really clear direction for the organization to be both a management and a marketing organization. This is very high level. The job description gets into much more specifics, but this is meant to give some clarity as to what the role of the organization is and is not. There are no questions on the purpose statement?
I don't know if I have it, I have everything, but I don't see that, so. I have lots of pieces of paper.
James has a copy for you.
Okay. May have missed that one. My printer was working overtime.
I guess I just had one question on what we interpret the wording educational resource to mean.
It could mean something like the Concierge Institute. It could mean some type of training that's provided by the DMO.
That they would have a facet of some kind of, okay,
Right.
that's fine.
They might provide frontline worker training or something like that, yeah. And just sharing, I think sharing data about the economic impact of tourism and that sort of thing is also falls under that educational role.
Under bullet point number 3, why are we excluding county, regional, and statewide? I think the county should be specifically called out in there.
Sure.
Because the region could be the Portland metro region.
Meant to include the county, but we will add it explicitly. Purpose.
The one thing I would just make a general statement. When I lived in Bend, there were many, many things that I liked about Bend. There were many, many things I did not like about Bend that involved the tourist industry. And there were things that, you know, so be careful. I mean, I want us to be successful. I want us to be a destination. I want us to be many things, but I also want it to be also have the clear understanding that primarily it's about the livability of this community. I don't want this community to be overrun like Bend has become. And tourism is important, but if you don't have your base there of the people who live there, you know, it doesn't matter. And you and I have had this discussion about the fact that when the End of the Oregon Trail Center didn't change its programming, people in Oregon City stopped going. And we are the #1 broken link in the chain of tourism. We can't convince our own people who live here to talk about our town and talk about the things that, you know, oh, I haven't been there since whatever, or I've never gone back to it after the first time. That doesn't bode well for us. And so one of the education components that I've talked about for the whole time I've lived here is we have to get the people who live here on board about what we have. And they don't. I mean, it's, you know, it's sad when friends of my friends tell them about things here in Oregon City that they don't even know about. And so it's an untapped resource that we have not been able to get a handle on. But I also don't want it to be to the detriment of the people that live here. And I think in some cases, you know, not to pick on my friends in Bend, but I think it's gone kind of the other way. And some of those things definitely affect the livability of the place where the people live. So, you know, sometimes Tom McCall has said, you know, please come visit us, but don't stay. You know, yeah, we want them to come with 50 miles and we want them to go back home. But if they want to move here, that's great. But again, it's livability. This whole thing to me is key in helping preserve the livability of the town that we live in. So I just wanted to make that statement very clear about, and I feel very passionate about us. You know, we are basically one of the undiscovered places, and that's great. I just followed a TriMet bus up here, and there was a sign on the back of it about visiting Maupin. I mean, I've been there. I've been to Maupin. I like Maupin.
By mistake.
Not by mistake. No, I went to Maupin on purpose. So, you know, little teeny tiny Maupin. It's saying, come get wet, not this time of the year, you don't want to, but come visit us. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So maybe on the bus in Maupin, we're going to have an Oregon City poster of him coming to visit the first incorporated city, you know, west of the Missouri River. So
I actually have in my stack of stuff that I haven't had a chance to give to Mr. Graham, a brochure from the South Wasco County Visitor Association, which includes Maupin, which is just tremendous.
You bet.
A mix of information and coupons and ads and whatnot. It's really
Baker City is another one. Really one that has a really good.
I'll get it to you.
Good marketing group. As a matter of fact, one of our upcoming conferences is going to be in Baker City for the league. All right.
So that's good. DMO roll, that spreadsheet, did anybody need to look at that? Or?
I thought it was good.
Okay. And then I think the last thing would be the job description.
Yeah.
And then are we going to briefly talk about this questionnaire?
Certainly.
Oh, yes. you should talk about that as well.
I've got a couple of things on the job description.
Okey dokey.
Most of it is just grammar stuff, but some is material.
Too many of us have taken many, many English classes. We apologize.
So on core responsibilities and duties, starting where it says fostering, like 4 up from the bottom, we switched our, I don't know what the right word is, but all the rest of them are develop, oversee, whatever. So it should say foster a positive, advocate for, serve as, and then a couple more down, advocate for, just to be grammatically consistent. And then in the bottom one, it says advocate for beatification. I think that's a little different.
I know.
I think we mean beautification. I don't think we're beatifying it.
I think the Pope, I think the Pope is coming.
Sainthood.
The Pope is coming.
And the other thing, the second to the last one and the fourth to the last one are almost identical, wording-wise.
Oh, yes, you are correct. That is a mistake. We put it in twice and rewrote one of them and didn't catch it.
Is there walk on water on the bottom line? Because that's kind of what I
That goes
saw.
along with beatification, I think.
Yeah, and the beatification, well, that's where you get blessed by the water, yes.
Should we add on the responsibilities and duties, should it say something about providing regular reports to the city commission?
I believe that it does.
It says to the board of directors.
I see.
But I don't think it says to the city commission.
That's a question for you all. Would you like them to be required to give you a periodic report?
We do with the other stuff we have here.
Required from the DOCA executive. And the last thing I have, under required skills and competencies, the bottom two, the way they're worded, they're either responsibilities or we need to say ability to champion change and ability to apply business acumen. Because those last two aren't skills or competencies. So I don't know where you want it to live, but
no, you are correct.
And I'll stop there.
Anybody else have anything on those? Adam, see anything we need to add? Frank?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you want to go back for the questions for board nominees?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yes. I do like the fact that C says craft beverage. That's the word I was trying to think of.
Which document
Instead of
is
just
that on?
beverage
I don't
industry.
have this one in front of me.
Craft
Staff
beverage.
report,
Did you email this out?
it's under 3A, and it's the last attachment. Questions for board nominees.
Oh, thank you. My only thought there was, because some of these representatives are going to be from for-profit do we need to ask about what the applicant's financial relationship is to the group that they represent?
That would be a good idea.
Do we need to ask for financial?
Full disclosure.
Or conflict?
You mean like employee versus owner versus
Yeah,
investor or
if they have
something?
an ownership stake in it, because that could come up with conflict of interest things, especially, I would think, if somebody has an ownership stake in an organization and we're in a company that we're going to end up doing business with.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Yeah.
Is that on you to make that update? Okay.
And something that I will provide the board with is like a disclosure form for each board member to fill out that would list any potential conflicts. So that would also be addressed later as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That public entity I was mentioning to you, we have one we signed, and then the other nonprofits I belong to, we have one we have signed every year.
So you have to disclose it.
Yeah, but that would happen after they were appointed. So if you could, I'm just saying that will also happen later on internally, every year.
Forever.
I really think it's going to behoove us to try to work hard to see if we can get some more lodging in here, because I don't want the other entity that keeps looming its ugly head to put pressure on our housing. We already are under the screws for that. Would we get more hotels or, you know, I just recently stayed at a B&B and it was very nice.
Okay, any other comments on the questionnaire?
Nope.
What do we have in the way of agritourism? I mean, I looked up the definition, I'm not sure.
Not in Oregon City, but right outside, we've got several wineries.
Oh, I know that.
We've got the Farm Loop Trail, we've got several farms that are
I've been to the winery, I just didn't know if we were
Pumpkins.
including it in our product.
Christmas trees,
market,
we've got Christmas trees, we've got people supplying produce to the farmer's market. They're right in our
I got it.
UGB, but not in the city limit.
I think I understand it.
Chickens, honey, you name it.
All right,
Okay, let's move on.
are we somewhere?
Or somewhere.
All right.
We've got, that's it.
That's it.
So this will come back because we have to vote on it later?
What was the question we were gonna loop back
Yes,
on?
that's on the 18th. That's on the 18th.
It was yours and it was pretty major. But we wanted to see what was in
Was
it.
it the future
Could
role
you
of the
speak up,
commission in the
Michael?
selection of the
Michael,
second
speak
board?
up. You're not,
But
Rocky asked a question and we decided to defer it until after we discussed some of the other documents and then we were gonna come back.
there were multiple questions that I had that were under the MOU.
Right.
We got to those.
Okay.
It wasn't a specific question. We were on a different topic and I knew it would come up later. So I think I got my questions
yeah,
covered.
I had Rocky's name here with things underneath it, checked all the boxes off.
So James, we're gonna make the changes,
You make the changes.
bring it back at a commission meeting. Once we get it approved, we'll begin the process of recruitment for applicants.
Yes, for the board.
And
Yeah,
can we
but we're
also
not gonna
have a
start
red
that
line copy
before,
as well?
correct?
Say again?
A red line copy,
Oh, what?
all the changes that we made.
Oh, I see, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, but, so yes,
that's the plan.
that's the plan. All right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Cheryl.
Allow me to take a minute to compliment these two fine people. Their
Absolutely.
meeting leadership was incredible. Cheryl's participation was invaluable. I mean, some of the tools they use, like the responsible, accountable, informed and consulted thing, that was a great exercise. It was probably one of the most effective committees I've ever served on. And thank you for your leadership. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for providing your input to this initial effort because it was really important.
I
Well,
tried to
Rocky,
keep
we
it
won't hold our
measured.
breath yet, but we got this far. You ever think we'd get this far? We're here. We're close.
Yeah, good.
I'm excited.
Management by objective.
Thank you, thank you. It's great to meet
Thank
both of
you.
you. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks.
Bye.
I hope you're having some sunny weather there.
No. Look at me, I'm freezing.
Oh, I see you wearing the big sweater, okay.
Bye.
Bye, thank you. All right, so let's move on to item number 4, City Manager's Report, updates on city projects.
Thank you. So the first project, providing the update, is the Quiet Zone. On the December 18th City Commission meeting will be a an IGA with ODOT for coordination and preparing for property acquisition documents as part of that project. So that's the next step there. You've probably seen surveying crews out there. We will have Singer Hill closed for additional survey work on Thursday, and signs are up and been noticed for that closure. Oops, I got 2 number 1s there. Charter Parks, so this is working on the McLaughlin Promenade. That'll be brought to the City Commission at the January 15th meeting for an update and direction how to proceed. Ms. Raines has been reaching out to all the property owners along the promenade that had encroachments, explaining the license agreement, as well as been successful with some signatures, answering questions, and then just provide an update on those refusing to sign. So we'll be requesting direction from the commission on how to proceed at that meeting. The Cayuse 5 Memorial, we met with the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation to continue the discussions on the Phase 2 of the Cayuse Memorial. So we've got our team put together. We're really going to run the process the same way we ran the original approvals. So working with PRAC, Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, Planning, Historic Review Board, to get through that process, but we are waiting as the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Reservation are working with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and their cultural resource officers to make sure both nations are in agreement on design and location and whatnot before we start any formal process.
And question on that. So beyond the excess from what was originally allocated for phase one that is still available to them, is it, am I correct in my recollection that they will, for this phase, they, meaning the tribe, will be carrying the mantle on the fundraising side for phase two?
Yes, we're still working through some of the funding. Obviously, we don't have a design yet to come up with the cost estimate, we did have some funds that were available still from the city, initial $150,000 investment, but then I know that they've been able to secure some additional grants, the Confederate Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation, grants and some philanthropic measures that went on, so they're putting together additional monetary resources to bring to the project as well.
Okay.
The courthouse, I don't have an update on the courthouse.
I do.
You may have a much better one than I would probably have.
So, you want me to do it now?
Yep, your meeting.
So we finished our work. We had 3 2-hour meetings. James, I wish James was still here. Oh, he's still here, okay. Come back up. They had not what I would consider a robust discussion at a policy work session, and Commissioner Smith said, well, how soon could we put together a request for, what was it, economic interest? And Gary said, oh, I can do that in 2 weeks, and I basically had kind of a conniption in the back because I think 2 weeks to get back to them is not enough time for us to input, to, express our desires and our concerns about where the commission is going right now. And I would say, from my standpoint, I would prefer that they defer this to the incoming board because I think it's a fairly major decision. I know they might have one more meeting this month and then that's it.
I talked with the county policy analyst who's putting together the RFP for the development community, and what I was told was that it will be a broad net thrown out to attract developers, and then after that, criteria will be developed to choose the right developer for the job, and one of the items that was on that list was the possible demolition of the courthouse, as all these options. Now, the committee that we served on took that off
the table,
but it was still in the RFP that demolition is possible of the courthouse. So,
yeah, I guess this is again my personal opinion only, and I wasn't there giving the comments of the city because we haven't really discussed it, but my thinking is that the city needs to be intimately involved in the disposition of that building. I mean, I know that there were comments thrown out about, well, we'll give it to the city for $1. I guess if I could wave my magic wand and you guys can disagree with me, I would like us to have some sort of control over it that wouldn't involve a big outlay of money or maybe no outlay of any money, but to give us an opportunity to get the city's input into this process, because to me it's moving way too fast. Like I said, the committee meetings were very tightly controlled in a box, and James and I had discussed, we had actually put together sort of a basic outline of a framework that we'd hope would be discussed. Not that that would be it, but at least it listed all the points. I'd say the document that I've received a review does not cover those points. But I do not want the county to sell it to the highest bidder and have somebody sit on it again, you've heard me say this over and over, I do not want it to become another Blue Heron where George Heigurken sat on it, stripped it of all of its valuable assets, and then let it sit there, and then sold it for a whole bunch of money. Tootie made a lot of comments, and I'll be familiar with her name, about, well, we're spending, I don't know whether she said it was $30,000 a year, it can't be $30,000 a month. They talked about their maintenance and upkeep to keep the heat on and the lights on.
Over 300,000.
Yeah, and so they don't plan to fully vacate the building until probably August. The other thing that she committed to, now I don't know if she can keep it, but, you know, I've asked for the Liberty Plaza to be segregated off so that we could get it as a park. We've indicated, Kendall indicated that desire to them as well, that we wanted that as a park. And the way this RFP is, our request for economic interest, it talks about the Liberty Plaza being in play and it could possibly even be destroyed if whoever the entity is, which I think is not correct. We'd have to do a few lot line adjustments to change it, to get it off of that, because it's part of the big property, it's part of the larger piece of property. Then there's the parking lot. They plan to keep the Holman building, which is the one where the jury meets if you've been on jury duty or been in the law library. They plan to keep that for the time being. But there's just several things that we could not get to during this process. And I appreciate the county's effort and what they did, but we could have made it so much more. And that's my concern, is that they're in a rush to do something about this, and I don't think they're in a rush to do something about this. I've talked to, I've been asked to come in and talk to Commissioner West. I've been asked to talk to Commissioner Savis. I gave him sort of the big overview, and each time I said, city involvement in this process is critical. Where are we a partner in this? We need to be a partner in this. It doesn't matter whether we control it or not, but we need to be at the table. And right now, we're not at the table.
The last statement I'd make is that I had a very pleasant conversation with the analyst. His first name was Tony. I can't remember the last name, but a very pleasant conversation, and he assured me, and I wanted to, the word economic vitality was used in the RFP. And I wanted them to define what that means, because economic vitality means different things to different people. And so a definition that reflects and recognizes the economic input that the county, that the old city courthouse has provided, should also be carried forward. Because actually $3.4 million of financial injection is a result of the county courthouse. So,
and also I think, you know, as a follow-up, I think we need to have I think it would behoove us to have sort of a plan in place. Possibly, again, there's budget implications, but, you know, hear me out, something similar to what we did when COVID came. Because there are some businesses downtown that will be more impacted than others when a lot of the space is vacated. And we need to be able to assess what we can do to assist them. In the same manner that we realized that there were implications with everything being shut down after COVID. This will be a portion of that. It's a concern that I have had, and I've mentioned to Chair Smith that they could possibly be a contributor to some of this. She just didn't say anything, but at least I threw it out there, because they're causing the impact. I mean, I gave everybody an article at the committee that was dated 1977 from the old Enterprise Courier, and it was basically stated, courthouse to vacate, merchants worried. Well, you know, here we are, 1977 to 2024. We're still in the same place, and there were some of the same concerns that were brought up at this meeting were also in this article. Unfortunately, many of the businesses that were interviewed, that, you know, they've retired or moved on. So it's really no different. It can't be sitting vacant. It can't be sold. I feel should not be sold to the highest bidder, because there's people out there speculating. So we've come up with we threw out some ideas to the county about what they could use in the interim. I know that our public affairs manager is reaching out and has already reached out to many of the film industry folks, because they're always looking for some nice older courthouse looking type building to film in, and that would be a boost. Matter of fact, next week there'll be some limited filming downtown, which is nice, so that helps us. But, you know, I think they're being a little short-sighted, so that's all I really want to say.
The courthouse is one piece, the Liberty Plaza is another piece. What else can we be doing that we're not doing?
We could be talking to those commissioners.
So one of the things that we need to think about too is not only, I mean, there's many events that Downtown Association utilizes Liberty Plaza for, but one of which, or at least two of which is really crucial to, I think, our city, is the Halloween event
and
the tree lighting.
Yeah.
There's no power in Liberty Plaza. There's no ability to do any event in Liberty Plaza minus the courthouse. So we're at the end of that chain of events, meaning that as early as next year, we're going to have downtown rethink the way it deals with Liberty Plaza or the way that we deal with events in downtown, which are crucial events. And we know that our citizens have said that the events are crucial in Oregon City. So I mean, I know we've done what we have been able to do and can, but I just feel like we haven't budged anything, and I don't know what else we can do, but the time has come, and we don't have those answers. I think we really need to step up and make an effort, especially for Liberty Plaza. We may not be able to do much more than that, but I don't know what else I can do or the rest of us can do.
We can talk to the commissioners about, I mean, they're aware of it. I've mentioned Liberty Plaza from day one. And, you know, I've gotten head nods from Commissioner Schrader, from Commissioner Smith, from Commissioner West, from Commissioner Savas. So, again, because those things have not been, this is why I wanted them to delay sending out this proposal.
I think most of us would make the assumption that it'll be taken up at the next group that comes in, but we don't know what could happen.
Well, I've reached out to the incoming chair to make him aware that this was going on, and
I've talked to him as well, but
and if you know, so
we're meeting with them next Thursday as well.
We're having a meeting
so we can convey some of these concerns as well.
Mr. Marl, sir.
Thank you. James, can you just restate and clarify what you said about the inclusion of the ability to demolish versus not, and how it was included in some things and not included in others? Can you just clarify that for me?
Yeah, during the committee meetings, we took, there was a discussion about options for development. And one of the options that was thrown out during those deliberations was to demolish. Now, the committee agreed that we would take that off the agenda for the development of the courthouse. The demolition would not be a part of it.
And it was not a part of our report that we submitted.
And so when I saw the RFP or RFI, it was an option to demolish the courthouse.
Okay. I will just say that I think it's important to keep that option. Not that I would like to see it demolished, but if we do end up in a situation where it's like the paper mill and it's sitting there for 10 years and it's causing a black hole on our main street for a decade plus, then that does need to be an option. That's what I believe. And I think that's what I've heard uniformly from the business interests and from people involved with DOCA, that I think everyone wants to see it stay. And if there is a way to do it, that is a lot, it's made a lot more difficult because we don't have very many funding sources to make it pencil out for private developers without public funds, which we are limited to right now. So in the absence of that and leaving it just to a private developer, there are concerns that it just won't pencil out.
Well, it's not going to without public support, but again, it was not part of our report, and the DOCA board does not support demolition at this time.
Okay.
I don't know about OCBA, because I don't really deal with their inner workings.
No, I wouldn't expect them to, because we're not at that point. I'm just saying that keeping it open as an option, while it's uncomfortable to talk about, is important to leave on the table, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's not uncomfortable to talk about. It's just, in my profession, demolition is always the last option. It's not the first option. And somebody threw that out, well, why don't we just tear it down? And
well, no, I agree with you.
One of the commissioners said, oh, yeah, we could just take some of the parts off and put it over here. And
like I said, if we were to find ourselves in a position where it looks like the next 15 years, it's going to be vacant, and we need to figure out urban renewal in order to do it, and there's no way that it pencils out that it needs to be on there.
I heard what you said. That's the last option.
Mayor McGriff?
Yes, sir.
You've mentioned a report a couple of times. Can the rest of us see that?
I don't see why not.
I don't either, because I don't know what you're advocating for on behalf of the city when there hasn't been a discussion.
I'm throwing out options that I have been talking to Chair Smith for the entire time that she has been on that board the second time around about, let's have a discussion about the courthouse. Let's have a discussion about the courthouse. This was their attempt to check the box saying, we've had a discussion about the courthouse. We really haven't had a discussion about the courthouse.
Right. I get that. I would just like to know what
I appreciate the committee's effort, but it was abbreviated and constrained.
Yeah, they've done nothing for years and now they're in a hurry.
Yeah. My point exactly. So that's my report at this point in time. I just want us to be at the table, however that evolves. And right now we're not at the table, which is why we're having. I asked staff. I said, look, I need to talk to Gary. And then when I talked to him after the meeting, the last committee meeting, the commission meeting, he said, okay, well, let's talk about it. So I'm gonna try.
Tamuana Village, the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde have submitted their land use application for an amendment to the framework plan. The Planning Commission hearing is currently scheduled for January 27th. Staff continues to meet with their staff looking at, some of the management of the property. They really want to make it kind of a distinct area. So, sidewalks don't necessarily comply with our sidewalk standards in terms of design or lighting standards, so really trying to work through operation and maintenance considerations of some of those improvements that they're proposing in that area.
Where do we fit into that?
That's what we're talking about.
Not we, but I'm talking about the city commission.
It's a planning commission decision. It's a type 3 amendment to the framework plan. So unless it's appealed, the planning commission will be the final decision.
That's okay. I'm having a little bit of angst about that.
Well, that's what the code says.
That's okay.
That's the way it's run.
I'm just saying. I'm being transparent about it.
And then there's been no changes with Kenema rights of way.
Sorry?
We have not done anything with Kenema rights of way.
We're waiting to get through the McLaughlin Promenade rights of way.
Yep, that's all that I have.
All right. Commissioner O'Donnell.
The only thing we have remaining is the South Fork Water Board meeting next week, I believe.
Is it the 19th? I can't remember. The day gets switched around.
I'll have to look on my calendar.
It's the 19th and I can't be there.
Well, you just tell us your proxy and we'll ask all the questions as we usually do. CHP, you had a meeting.
Yeah, and I'll mention a few things from it. I don't think I need to go through everything. I also had my meeting with the city manager. We talked about CHP a little bit. New executive director and our city manager have met to talk about a lot of things, but there's effort being made to do some work fairly soon on the hoops to repaint and fix, get those back in shape. So there's been an effort to start planning for maintenance. Yes, oh my gosh, that's great. CHP is working with Curtis Foundation. A lot of us know about the Curtis collection of wagons. The fear that we've all had is coming to reality, and that within the next year they're going to have to start auctioning off the collection.
That's happening soon.
And that is devastating. However, there's been discussions with Clackamas Heritage Partners and Curtis Foundation to work together, hopefully creating space to bring some of the collection to End of the Oregon Trail, and if future grants get funded, possibly being able to expand that space to add some of that collection. But that's a process that CHP and Curtis Foundation are working on together. We had our meeting last night and approved the budget for the upcoming year. I can send that out, although I'm sure that's been sent to Parks. If not, okay, we can get that to you if you want to see that. There was a new hire, Dr. Zena. They made a new hire for someone to focus on educational programs. They've made changes to there was a lot of school groups that weren't able to start coming to the End of the Oregon Trail based on lack of purchase order access and things like that. So some of those things have been fine-tuned to open up the doors to a lot more school groups, and now there's a staff person focusing on working with school groups who worked in the Portland schools before, so that's an effort to try to increase attendance. Ticket pricing is going, there was different levels in ticketing, and those are all going to be combined to pretty much one level, which would actually lower the ticket price a little bit, but hopefully.
When you talked about purchase ordering, is that from the
process from the schools purchasing tickets to the End of the Oregon Trail?
But not the other way around?
Right.
Making it easier for the schools.
Making it easier for schools to be able, there was a lot of schools that weren't making trips to the End of the Oregon Trail because of the way that the process payments, all right. There's a whole capital plan going forward to working on the building and lots of grants, a ton of grants. Some of those grants are specific to adding staff people. Some of those grants are specific to expanding the building or maintaining the building. Some of them are to things like the project like the Longhouse that has been talked about in the future, things like that. There is a chicken that now lives on the property. Tony can go into the great details of that.
Chicken or a rooster?
A chicken. So apparently it was 3 chickens?
There were 3.
So 3 chickens showed up on the property. I don't know the background of how they got there. I think someone just left them.
Dinner the other night?
So 2 of them have disappeared or have been
coyotes
or deceased.
Coyotes.
There is 1 chicken left who has apparently been named after Dr. McLaughlin's wife, Marguerite.
Oh, great.
And she now is living on the property with
a roof over her head.
Wait, do we allow chickens?
Yes, we do.
No, so that's happening. All right. I guess maybe we have we're going into, we talked about there's an expense in the budget to hire a consultant essentially to take us through a strategic planning session and envisioning. The board is discussing the ability of the board to have a 3-day retreat, which would be on site, similar to our kind of, you know how we do retreats in 3 days, multiple hours at the same place, or 2 days. That set off an hour conversation about how any of us could commit to 3 days on the same 3 days. So that's all in debate. We're still committed to doing it and wanting to do it, but how that ends up, that's hopefully going to be in the next 2 months. I think I'll leave it at that for now. But lots going on with Clackamas Heritage Partners and End of the Oregon Trail.
I was just going to say, I've met with Corrine.
Oh, she's going to come, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
She will be here on our January 15th work session to give a full update, and that'll be an opportunity for the commission to ask questions. I think especially about what the city's, or what CHP's expectation is for the city in moving forward as partners, and what the city's feeling is on that and in relationship to the building and maintenance and forward planning. So that'll be on the 15th of
Will you
January.
make sure that she informs us of who is actually serving on this board these days?
Yes. Yes. I can get that for you too. I can leave
It should be a part of her PowerPoint presentation or whatever she's putting together.
And most of the board members have been encouraged to be there if they can on that night. All right.
Excitement, excitement, excitement. Youth advisory.
Yes, so we met last night, and just the main thing of note that I would say is that one of their initiatives is to address youth nicotine abuse, and they have looked at what other youth councils and leadership groups in other jurisdictions have done, and so they are requesting that we put a resolution at one of our meetings to call for at least the county to institute a ban on flavored nicotine products. So that is the main thing that's moving forward right now, among several things.
We're probably either going to use the Happy Valley one or the Milwaukee one, so we'd like to see if we can get that on the 7th agenda. It's in their packet. CIC?
Nothing to update there.
Okay. C4?
It was just a holiday gathering for this month.
And I got asked today at the nail salon about what's going on with tolling. So there are people still tracking that. So, yeah, I told her where we were. It was on pause, but that we were ever being vigilant still. And you mentioned, I guess, a couple of things about the proposed budget transportation funding package.
Mm-hmm.
You want to just say that again?
So ODOT has requested $1.8 billion per year to have their ideal budget and offer the services that they would like to offer. I will say that looking under the hood at what that 1.8 billion includes, it's a lot more than just operations and maintenance. It's a lot of bells and whistles that would be nice, but when you're in a budget crunch are not things that you would generally include. The governor recently released her proposed budget. She is proposing $1.75 billion per biennium. She says that is the starting point. I was in conversations yesterday related to my work, and we were talking about the transportation package, and just in raw numbers, and this is just for illustrative purposes only, to fill that governor's recommended budget number, if they were to do that solely off of raising the gas tax, that would amount to a 90-cent per gallon gas tax increase. So that definitely shows that if they want to achieve that, they're going to have to look at various forms of how to fund that. And do not think for one second that they have taken tolling off of the table there. They have based the ability to do the Rose Quarter project and the Abernathy project on the ability to do tolling, which is their fault because they didn't think of it in advance when initially formulating the projects, but that's the position that they've gotten themselves into. I mean, people talk about the transportation package as if it will be happening, and I don't know if it will be happening because of how big of a political mess it is, and if there is the ability to get the votes for something. So we will see.
I understand the Boone Bridge is still on the table for tolling. That's what I heard from Mayor Fitzgerald. That's in Wilsonville. It bifurcates Wilsonville, so if you wanted to go to Fred Meyer and you lived on the Charbonneau side, you'd have to pay a toll to go across to go to the store. I said, oh, gee, that's just like Oregon City. So, Michael.
C4 Metro met on November 20th. Kind of two presentations with basically the same stuff over and over. They talked about the regional flexible funds allocation on the 2028 to 2030 in our project for phase 3 of the McLaughlin Promenade, or not McLaughlin Promenade. McLaughlin Boulevard enhancement is still moving forward. And the other thing they talked about was a presentation of, I think it's phase 2 work on emergency routes, which are the routes that they identify that they would clear first in the event of Cascadia earthquake or whatever, mostly for first responders. Anyway, thrilling stuff as usual.
It is, yeah. Water and Environmental Services West Advisory Committee, so they have some vacancies, so there'll be some vetting of candidates. I've not seen who they are yet, but that's coming. Downtown Oregon City Association, we just had our final strategic planning meeting. The plan's been written, but we went over it again to make sure that everybody's in alignment with the 4 points of Main Street. As you know, we just had the tree lighting downtown, and Santa actually arrived when they said Santa was going to arrive, and the lights went on. Thanks to our public works staff, everything was going well. We had the same Santa we've had for the last 3 years. He was greeted by a lot of children, and miraculously, it did not rain just before we started the event. So it was damp, but no rain, and that was really great. I was really happy about that. So they did a good job, and the city did a fantastic job. The Arts Commission.
Yeah, can I mention one thing?
Sure.
So, I will say the city did a great job. The city looks, or the downtown looks great.
Would you like the new lights on the?
The lights on the elevator look great.
The lights on the tree, on the poles though, with the, our decorations now are lit.
So just as a hint to the future, partly because of the question of Liberty Plaza, and also part of the question of just things in general, we may want to have a conversation about the future of tree lighting and decor in downtown, because at least in most of us know that most of the decorations of downtown have fallen to a small number of public works people that are committed to it and are worried about its future. I think it's an important thing to keep doing in that. So I think part of the question might be just because of Liberty Plaza and that, but I don't want to forget that and have that somehow fall off our radar in the future. So maybe that's something we talk with downtown about and try to come up with some thoughts to make sure that we can continue our holiday celebrations similar going forward downtown.
Yep. The Arts Commission will be having an unveiling of the new art piece at the corner of 7th and Center. That'll be on the 21st, and only about 1,000 billion people have been invited. Too many people have been invited, from what I understand. Staff is kind of tearing their hair out at the moment. So that's the next thing that's coming up for them. I think there are a couple of vacancies coming up on the Arts Commission, and so they're doing some solicitation, and bless their hearts, they wanted to come up with a whole new set of criteria for evaluating people and so forth and so on, and had to put the kibosh on that because I said, look, you have to have that discussion in public. You can't have a meeting outside of your meeting to talk about that. And I said, you can amend what you already have done in a public meeting. You already heard the report on the courthouse committee. Willamette Falls Landings and Heritage Area, it looks like they may have occupancy by the end of this month on the old historic city hall. If you've gone on across the bridge, you can see that the plastic is still in the windows, but it's lit up. And I went over and kind of went, looking amazing. So they're working on a management plan and also a possible layout for how things will be inside. The legislation continues to move forward. They've been reaching out to the newly elected folks that are replacing other folks in the 5th district. I know that it's still moving forward. I doubt that any action will be taken on it before the end of this year. But currently, our entire delegation, both senator and representatives, are supportive of the legislation, which is great. They've been reaching out to Cliff Bentz over in District 2, and he's on board. The Locks Authority has finished finalizing its financial policies with regard to how money comes in, how money goes out, the checks and balances that are involved in that. We continue to have public outreach. Right now they're looking for a Willamette River user to be on the board. That position is vacant. Commissioner Smith has resigned her position. These are all governor appointments, so we don't really know what the governor's office is doing, or that office is even looking at. So we have some vacancies on that. And that's pretty much it, other than, continuing to advocate for our city positions that we've taken on different topics. I had my third conversations with the mayor. The first one was at City Hall earlier this fall. The second one was at Coffee Rush in the evening, and the third one was Monday. And after the first of the year, I hope to have another one at Coffee Rush just to invite people to come in and talk about stuff. That's it. Oh, I forgot the last thing. Councilor Mary Nolan, I think in a weak moment, talked me into being on some regional solid waste committee, and I just why did I say yes to that? Because I thought we had already decided everything about where we needed to go with solid waste with their plan, and I will say this. They like to have too many meetings and too many committees about stuff that they've already decided we're gonna be meeting on a Thursday, and they said, oh, well, can you come down to the Metro building? And I said, no, not coming, not driving down there, not doing it. So I'll be Zooming in, I'm just not. I have another meeting prior to that, and it leaves me 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I'm not fighting that traffic at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to drive to Metro. My sanity's more important.
Okay, well, for my sanity, can we adjourn?
Well, we need to adjourn. We'll take a brief break, and then we need to adjourn into executive session. So we are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.